The first whisper of dawn touches the ancient stones of Cairo, and in the hidden garden high above the sleeping city, Hassan's weathered hands already know their purpose. The sky holds that particular shade of deep indigo that comes just before sunrise, when the world exists in perfect stillness between night and day. He moves like a shadow among the terraced pathways, his bare feet making no sound on the worn sandstone steps. The air is cool and sweet here, heavy with the perfume of night-blooming jasmine that cascades in white waterfalls from the upper pools. These flowers have opened their hearts to the darkness, releasing their essence into the pre-dawn silence. And now, they wait for Hassan's gentle touch to gather them before the sun claims them again. The highest terrace holds the jasmine pools, circular basins carved from pink granite centuries ago by hands long turned to dust. The water here is sacred, drawn from a spring that has flowed beneath Cairo since the time of the pharaohs. It bubbles up through limestone channels, carrying with it the memory of deep earth and patient stone. Hassan dips his clay vessels into this ancient water, filling them with liquid that catches the first hint of golden light creeping over the eastern walls. Around him, the date palms stand like gentle guardians, their fronds whispering secrets to the morning breeze. Through their protective canopy, shafts of amber light begin to filter down, painting golden patterns on the garden paths. The light moves slowly, lovingly, touching first the highest leaves, then creeping down trunk by trunk, terrace by terrace, like honey poured from the sky. Hassan carries the sacred water down carved steps worn smooth by countless pilgrimages, past beds of mint and rose geranium, past fountains where small birds come to drink and bathe their feathers in the growing warmth. The water in his vessels barely ripples as he walks, so practiced is his gait, so certain his step along these familiar pathways. In the heart of the garden, protected by walls within walls, grow the desert roses. These are not the roses of northern gardens, with their soft petals and thorny stems. These are the children of sand and sun, their blooms deep crimson like dried blood, their leaves silver green and thick with stored moisture. They grow in raised beds filled with soil that Hassan's grandfather's grandfather carried here grain by grain from the deep desert, mixed with river silt and the composted remains of palm fronds. The desert roses have waited through the night for this moment, for Hassan's arrival with the jasmine-scented water. He pours it slowly around their roots, watching as the earth drinks deeply, gratefully. The water carries more than moisture. It carries the essence of jasmine dreams, the coolness of stone springs, the blessing of patient tending. As he works, the sun climbs higher, and the city below begins to stir. Somewhere in the distance, the first call to prayer drifts upward on the warming air. Market vendors begin their preparations, and the sound of cartwheels on ancient cobblestones creates a gentle rhythm that mingles with the splash of fountains and the soft cooing of doves who nest in the garden walls. But here, in this sanctuary above the waking world, time moves differently. Hassan's movements are unhurried, deliberate, each gesture a prayer in itself. He tends to each rose with individual attention, checking the moisture of the soil with fingers that can read the earth like a beloved book. Some plants receive more water, others less, according to their needs, their age, their position in the garden's careful balance. The morning light grows stronger now, painting the garden in shades of gold and amber and warm honey. The jasmine begins to close its white petals, retreating from the approaching heat, while other flowers prepare to open morning glories, unfurling their purple trumpets, hibiscus spreading their scarlet skirts to catch the sun. Hassan pauses in his work to watch this daily transformation, this gentle changing of the guard as night flowers yield to day bloomers. His lined face, weathered by decades of desert sun, relaxes into contentment. This is his hour, his sacred time when the garden belongs to him alone, when the ancient rhythms of water and root and flower move through his hands like music. The city spreads below him, a tapestry of domes and minarets catching the golden light. But Hassan's world is here among the terraces, where his ancestors have tended these same paths, watered these same roses, whispered the same quiet prayers to the desert wind that carries the scent of jasmine and roses out over the sleeping city like a benediction. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty courtyard as the first sounds of approaching hoofbeats echoed through Cairo's narrow streets. Hassan paused in his work, his weathered hands still holding the small clay pot he had been tending, and listened to the familiar rhythm of a merchant caravan making its way through the city's ancient passages. From his position in the garden sanctuary, he could hear the gentle jingling of brass bells and the soft conversations of travelers who had journeyed many days to reach this crossroads of the world. The air carried with it the faint scent of exotic spices and the dust of distant roads, promising treasures from lands beyond the great desert. Hassan set down his clay pot with careful precision and made his way through the garden's winding paths, past the established date palms and the young fig trees that had begun to flourish under his patient care. The morning light filtered through the leaves above, creating a dappled pattern on the worn stone walkway beneath his feet. The caravan had settled in the merchant quarter, just beyond the garden walls. Hassan could see the camels, their long necks swaying gently as they rested after their arduous journey from Damascus. The merchants moved with the unhurried grace of men who understood that the best transactions took time. That trust was built slowly, like the growth of a rare orchid in carefully prepared soil. Among the travelers, Hassan recognized Khalil, a spice merchant whose family had been trading these routes for generations. But today, Hassan's interest lay not in cardamom or saffron, but in the small wooden crates that Khalil's younger brother carefully unloaded from the lead camel's back. "Peace be upon you, Master Gardener," Khalil called out, his voice warm with genuine respect. "We have brought gifts from the gardens of Persia, as you requested." Hassan approached the merchant with measured steps, his eyes already drawn to the mysterious containers. Each crate was no larger than a man's torso, but within them lay possibilities that could transform his sanctuary for years to come. The wood was smooth from the desert crossing, and tiny holes had been drilled in precise patterns to allow air to flow to the precious contents within. "And upon you, peace," Hassan replied, bowing slightly. "Tell me of their journey." Khalil's younger brother, whose name was Amin, stepped forward with the reverence of one who understood the sacred nature of what they carried. "These seeds come from the royal gardens of Isfahan," he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "The rose cuttings were taken from bushes that have bloomed for 100 summers. The jasmine seeds were gathered at dawn, when the dew still held their sleeping power." Hassan nodded slowly, understanding that these were not merely plants, but living connections to gardens that existed in lands he would never see. Each seed carried within it the memory of different soil, different rain, different hands that had tended its parent plant with the same devotion he brought to his own sanctuary. The first crate revealed small cloth pouches, each tied with colored thread to indicate its contents. Hassan opened the nearest pouch and poured a few seeds into his palm. They were small, dark, and smooth, with the weight of promise. These were climbing roses from the mountains near Damascus, varieties that could withstand both scorching heat and bitter cold. "The gardener who gave us these," Amin continued, "said they would bloom in colors not seen in Egyptian gardens, deep purples like twilight over the mountains, and whites so pure they seemed to hold moonlight within their petals." Hassan closed his eyes and felt the seeds' potential against his skin. In his mind, he could already see where they would find their home in his sanctuary, which walls they would eventually climb, how their fragrance would mingle with the existing perfumes of his carefully cultivated paradise. The second crate held cuttings wrapped in damp linen, their stems still green with life despite the long journey. Hassan examined each one with the attention of a scholar reading an ancient text, noting the thickness of the stems, the color of the young leaves, the way each cutting seemed to pulse with barely contained vitality. As the morning progressed toward midday, Hassan listened to the merchants' stories of the gardens they had visited. They spoke of courtyards where water sang through marble channels, of pergolas heavy with grape vines that cast purple shadows in the afternoon light, of herb gardens where the air itself seemed to shimmer with the essence of mint and thyme. With each tale, Hassan selected another cutting, another packet of seeds, building in his mind the future landscape of his sanctuary. The merchants asked for no payment beyond the promise that these foreign plants would find good homes in Egyptian soil, that their distant origins would be honored in this new land. As the sun reached its zenith and the caravan prepared to continue its journey, Hassan carefully carried his new treasures back through the garden gates, already imagining the seasons of patient tending that lay ahead. The afternoon sun filters through the ancient olive trees, casting dappled shadows across the stone pathways of the hidden garden. Here, in this secluded grove within the heart of Cairo's secret sanctuary, time moves differently. The leaves whisper secrets to the warm breeze, and somewhere in the distance, the gentle splash of a fountain creates a rhythm as old as the city itself. Ibn Rashid adjusts his worn cotton robes and settles beneath the largest olive tree, its gnarled trunk bearing witness to countless seasons. His weathered hands smooth the parchment scroll across his lap, covered with intricate diagrams of star charts and lunar calculations. The scholar's dark eyes, still sharp despite his 70 years, trace the careful notations he made during last night's observations from the garden's highest terrace. The olive groves stretch around him in peaceful rows, their silvery leaves shimmering in the gentle afternoon light. Each tree stands like a sentinel, roots deep in the rich, dark earth that has been tended by generations of gardeners. The air here holds a different quality cooler, more fragrant, touched with the essence of jasmine and the green scent of growing things. Hassan appears along the winding path, moving with the quiet grace of someone who belongs to this place. The young gardener carries a brass tray, steam rising from the small glass cup at its center. His footsteps make barely a whisper on the smooth stones, worn smooth by countless feet over the centuries. The boy has learned the art of moving through the garden without disturbing its tranquil atmosphere. "Peace be upon you, Ibn Rashid," Hassan says softly, bowing his head in respectful greeting. "I have brought mint tea, freshly brewed with leaves from the garden's herb beds, and dates from the palm trees by the eastern wall. They are particularly sweet this season." The scholar looks up from his scrolls, his lined face creasing into a gentle smile. "And upon you, peace, young Hassan. Your timing is as perfect as the phases of the moon. Come, sit with me a while. The afternoon is too beautiful to spend alone." Hassan sets the tray on a flat stone beside the tree's base, the brass catching glints of sunlight that filter through the leaves above. The mint tea releases its cool, refreshing aroma into the warm air, mingling with the earthy scent of the olive grove. The dates are plump and golden, their sweetness promising sustenance for both body and spirit. As Hassan settles cross-legged on the soft grass, Ibn Rashid gestures toward his parchments. "I have been studying the moon's influence on the garden's rhythm," he says, his voice carrying the quiet authority of years spent in contemplation. "Have you noticed how certain flowers open only under the full moon's light? The night-blooming jasmine, the evening primrose, they respond to celestial forces as surely as the tides respond to lunar pull." Hassan nods thoughtfully, sipping the warm tea. "My grandfather spoke of such things. He said the wise gardener plants by the moon's phases, trusts in the ancient patterns that govern all growing things. When the moon waxes, the sap rises. When it wanes, the roots grow deep." The scholar's eyes brighten with the joy of finding a kindred spirit. Precisely. Last night, as I watched from the terrace, I observed how the night-blooming cereus opened its single flower just as the moon reached its zenith. The timing was no coincidence, it was cosmic harmony made visible. Around them, the olive grove settles deeper into afternoon tranquility. Somewhere a dove calls softly to its mate, the sound carrying across the garden like a prayer. The fountain's gentle music continues its eternal song, punctuated by the quiet rustle of leaves in the warm breeze. This pocket of serenity exists apart from the bustling streets of Cairo, beyond the garden walls. Ibn Rashid closes his eyes briefly, feeling the ancient rhythm of this place. Here, surrounded by trees that have witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties, he finds the peace that has always eluded him in the city's crowded quarters. The garden offers what no library or observatory can provide, a direct connection to the natural forces he studies in his scrolls and charts. The garden teaches patience, he murmurs, more to himself than to Hassan. The stars move in their appointed courses, the flowers bloom in their destined seasons, and we, if we are wise, learn to move with the same unhurried grace. As the afternoon light grows golden and soft, both men sit in companionable silence, sharing the sweet dates and fragrant tea. The olive trees stand guard around them, their presence both ancient and eternal, while somewhere in the distance, the first evening flowers begin to prepare for their nocturnal dance with moonlight. The afternoon sun filters through the broad leaves of the date palms, casting dancing patterns of light and shadow across Hassan's weathered workbench. He moves with the unhurried grace of someone who has performed this ritual countless times, yet treats each moment as sacred and new. Before him lie his tools, arranged with the precision of a scribe's writing instruments. A curved grafting knife with a bone handle worn smooth by decades of use, thin strips of palm fiber for binding, and small clay pots filled with a healing paste made from tree sap and ground herbs. Hassan selects a young rootstock, its stem thick and strong, rooted deep in the rich soil that has been nurtured by generations of gardeners before him. The plant seems to sense his presence, its leaves rustling softly in the gentle breeze that carries the mingled fragrances of jasmine, mint, and the distant spice markets beyond the garden walls. He examines the stem with eyes that have learned to read the language of growing things, searching for the perfect spot where new life might take hold. The grafting knife catches a beam of sunlight as Hassan makes his first careful incision. The cut is clean and precise, angled just so, creating a small window in the green bark where another variety might join and flourish. His movements are deliberate, almost ceremonial, each motion flowing into the next like the steps of an ancient dance passed down through countless seasons of planting and tending. From a nearby basket, he selects a cutting from his prized Damascus rose, its stem bearing the promise of blooms that will unfold in shades of deep crimson and salmon pink. The fragrance of this variety is legendary, sweet and complex, with notes that remind him of honey and distant mountains. As he prepares the cutting, trimming it to fit perfectly against the rootstock, Hassan whispers a quiet blessing, a tradition his grandfather taught him when he was still a boy learning the mysteries of the garden. The joining of the two plants requires patience and perfect timing. Hassan aligns the cut surfaces, ensuring that the green growing layer beneath the bark meets precisely. This cambium, thin as parchment yet vital as the Nile itself, must touch perfectly for the graft to take hold. He binds the union with strips of palm fiber, wrapping them with gentle firmness, creating a secure embrace that will hold the two plants together as they slowly become one. Time seems to slow as Hassan works. The sounds of the city fade into a distant murmur, replaced by the closer symphony of the garden. The soft buzz of bees moving from bloom to bloom, the gentle splash of water flowing through the irrigation channels, the the whispered conversations of leaves stirring in the afternoon breeze. A pair of doves settles on the fountain's edge, their soft cooing adding to the peaceful atmosphere that surrounds this sacred work. As each graft is completed, Hassan covers the binding with his healing paste, a mixture that will protect the vulnerable junction from infection while the two plants learn to share their life force. The paste has the scent of frankincense and myrrh, aromatics that have blessed this land since the time of the pharaohs. He applies it with reverence, knowing that in this simple act, he is participating in the eternal cycle of growth and renewal. The afternoon light begins to soften, taking on the golden quality that transforms Cairo's dust into something magical. Hassan's hands move steadily from plant to plant, creating unions that will produce roses unlike any that have bloomed before. Some grafts will yield flowers that combine the hardiness of desert varieties with the delicate beauty of mountain roses. Others will marry the intense fragrance of ancient strains with the prolific blooming of newer cultivars. With each completed graft, Hassan feels a deep satisfaction that goes beyond the mere completion of a task. He is creating beauty that will outlast his own lifetime, planting seeds of wonder that his grandchildren's children might one day discover in their own moments of quiet contemplation. The roses he grafts today will bloom in springs yet to come, their petals carrying forward the accumulated wisdom of countless seasons. As the shadows lengthen and the call to evening prayer begins to echo from the nearby minaret, Hassan completes his final graft of the day. He steps back to survey his work, noting with satisfaction the neat rows of newly joined plants, each one holding the promise of extraordinary blooms. Tomorrow he will check the bindings, and in the days that follow, he will watch for the first signs of successful union. New growth emerging from the grafted wood, leaves unfurling with the vigor of shared life. The garden settles into the peaceful rhythm of evening, and Hassan's work becomes part of the timeless story written in soil and sunlight, in the patient marriage of root and stem, in the ancient art of coaxing beauty from the willing earth. The morning light filters through the date palms, casting dancing shadows across the ancient stones as Hassan makes his way along the winding path toward the heart of the garden. His bare feet know every worn step, every smooth depression carved by countless generations of gardeners who have walked this same route. The air is still cool from the night, carrying with it the sweet fragrance of jasmine and the earthy promise of another day's gentle labor. At the center of this hidden oasis, where all the garden paths converge like the spokes of a great wheel, stands the sacred well. Its circular stone rim has been polished smooth by 10 centuries of hands, drawing water from its depths. The limestone gleams pale gold in the early light, warm to the touch even in these quiet morning hours. Hassan approaches with the reverence his grandfather taught him, and his grandfather's grandfather before that. This well has sustained life in this secret place since the time when Cairo was young. Leaning over the ancient stones, Hassan peers into the darkness below. Far down in the cool depths, he can see the shimmer of water that has traveled beneath the desert sands for 1,000 years. It has flowed through underground rivers carved in the bedrock, filtered through layers of sand and stone, emerging here pure and sweet and life-giving. The water catches the morning light and throws it back in gentle ripples, as if the well itself is breathing. His clay vessels wait beside the well, their surfaces still cool from the night air. Hassan has shaped these jars with his own hands, following techniques passed down through generations. The clay comes from the banks of the Nile, mixed with just the right amount of sand from the desert floor. Each vessel holds exactly the amount of water needed for one section of the garden. He knows this not from measuring, but from years of watching, learning, understanding the thirsty whispers of every plant in his care. The rope is thick and strong, woven from palm fibers. Hassan ties the first vessel securely and lowers it into the well. Down it goes, past the sunlit rim, past the moss-covered stones, into the cool darkness where the ancient water waits. He feels the gentle tug when the jar reaches the surface below, the slight change in weight as it fills. Then slowly, carefully, he draws it up again, hand over hand, the water sloshing gently against the clay walls. The sound of water being poured creates a music all its own. As Hassan tips the first vessel into the stone channel that leads toward the western terraces, the liquid flows with a gentle murmur that seems to awaken the entire garden. The sound travels along the carefully carved waterways, a whispered song that speaks of life and abundance. Other channels branch off from the main flow, each one leading to a different section of the gardens, each one carrying its precious cargo to waiting roots. Hassan fills vessel after vessel, his movements unhurried and rhythmic. Pour and refill, each action deliberate and mindful. The water flows along channels carved into the stone terraces, following paths designed by master builders who understood the gentle art of bringing life to the desert. The sound grows and multiplies as more channels come alive with flowing water, a symphony of gentle trickles and murmurs that fills the air with liquid music. The plants seem to sense the approaching water before it reaches them. Leaves turn slightly toward the sound. Roots stretch deeper into the moistened soil. The roses unfurl their petals wider, as if greeting an old friend. The mint and basil release their fragrances more freely, filling the air with their aromatic gifts. Even the ancient fig tree seems to rustle its leaves with contentment as the water reaches its waiting roots. In the eastern terraces, the water flows past beds of healing herbs that Hassan's grandmother tended before him. Chamomile and lavender, sage and rosemary, each plant positioned precisely to receive just the right amount of moisture. The water moves with patience, taking its time, soaking deep into the earth where it will remain cool and available throughout the heat of the coming day. As the sun climbs higher, Hassan completes his morning ritual. The last of the water flows into the northern channels, where the youngest plants wait. These tender seedlings, barely visible above the rich soil, will grow strong with this daily gift from the sacred well. The sound of flowing water gradually softens as the channels fill and overflow into underground reservoirs that will sustain the garden through the longest days. Standing beside the well once more, Hassan places his palm flat against the warm stone rim. Through the rock, he can almost feel the pulse of the underground river far below, the ancient heartbeat of water that connects his small garden to the vast desert beyond. This water has nourished countless generations and will nourish countless more. In this moment, surrounded by the gentle music of flowing streams and the sweet perfume of watered earth, Hassan feels the deep contentment that comes from tending something eternal. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard as Hassan knelt beside his newest saplings, their tender leaves barely unfurled in the desert air. The young acacia trees swayed gently, vulnerable to the persistent winds that swept down from the eastern hills. He had been worrying about them through the night, wondering how the ancient gardeners had protected such delicate growth in this harsh landscape. The soft padding of sandals on stone announced a visitor. Hassan looked up to see Fatima approaching, her arms laden with bundles wrapped in fine linen. The spice merchant's face was warm with the kind of smile that comes from years of bringing joy to others through her fragrant wares. Her dark eyes sparkled with the wisdom of someone who understood the hidden connections between plants and their purposes. "Good morning, Hassan," she said, her voice carrying the musical cadence of someone who had spent years calling out her wares in the bustling bazaar. "I have brought you something that may help with those precious saplings of yours." She unwrapped the largest bundle, revealing strips of cinnamon bark, each piece curved and aromatic, releasing a scent that seemed to warm the very air around them. Hassan breathed in deeply, the familiar spice triggering memories of his grandmother's kitchen and the comfort of family meals shared in the cool of evening. "Cinnamon bark," Fatima explained, running her weathered fingers along the smooth surface of the largest piece. Ground into powder and mixed with water, it creates a natural barrier against the harsh winds. The old gardeners knew this secret. They would paint it onto young bark, creating a protective layer that allows the tree to breathe while shielding it from the desert's bite. Hassan accepted the gift with genuine gratitude, feeling the weight of generations of knowledge being passed into his hands. Together, they prepared the mixture in a ceramic bowl, the cinnamon powder dissolving into a paste the color of burnished copper. The scent rose between them, rich and protective, promising strength to his vulnerable plants. As they worked, Fatima began to speak of her travels, her voice taking on the rhythm of someone accustomed to long storytelling. The herb gardens here remind me of places I have seen along the spice routes, she said, gesturing toward the neat rows of medicinal plants that bordered the courtyard. In Damascus, there are gardens where mint grows so thick you can smell it from 3 streets away. The merchants there say that mint planted near other herbs makes them all grow stronger. They walked together through the herb sections, Fatima pausing to touch leaves and inhale the various scents. She pointed to the chamomile, its tiny white flowers nodding in the morning breeze. This one, she said, when dried and ground, mixed with honey, soothes both body and mind. Travelers on the long desert routes carry it for the nights when sleep comes slowly. Hassan listened, absorbing not just her words but the gentle authority in her voice, the way her fingers seemed to know exactly how to handle each plant without causing harm. She showed him fennel, explaining how its seeds could be chewed to calm the stomach after rich meals, and pointed out the lavender, whose purple spikes released their perfume at the slightest touch. The secret, Fatima continued, is understanding where each plant wants to live. Some crave the full sun. Others prefer the shelter of taller companions. Like people in the marketplace, they each have their preferences, their needs, their gifts to offer. She spoke of trade routes that stretched across continents, of caravans that carried not just spices but seeds, knowledge, and hope. Hassan began to understand how his garden was part of something vast and ancient, connected to countless other gardens through invisible threads of wisdom and care. There is a merchant I know, Fatima said, her eyes distant with memory, who travels from the lands beyond the Great River. He carries seeds of plants that bloom only at night, releasing fragrances that call to the desert moths. Perhaps, when the season is right, I could arrange for you to meet him. Your garden could become home to wonders that few have seen. The morning passed like water flowing over smooth stones, unhurried and peaceful. They applied the cinnamon mixture to Hassan's saplings, each stroke of the brush a prayer for growth and protection. The young trees seemed to stand a little straighter, their leaves catching the light with renewed confidence. As the sun climbed higher and the day grew warm, Fatima gathered her remaining bundles. Before leaving, she pressed a small pouch into Hassan's hands. Evening primrose seeds, she whispered. Plant them near your thinking spot. They bloom as the sun sets, and their fragrance brings clarity to troubled minds. Hassan watched her retreating figure until she disappeared around the corner, taking with her the morning's magic, but leaving behind the lasting gift of connection, knowledge, and the promise of seeds yet to be planted in the fertile earth of friendship and shared wisdom. The sun has climbed to its highest throne in the endless blue sky above Cairo, casting the world beyond the garden walls in waves of shimmering heat. But here, in this ancient sanctuary of palm trees, the air moves differently. It carries whispers of coolness, secrets shared between the towering date palms that have stood sentinel over this hidden oasis for generations beyond counting. Hassan steps deeper into the grove, his bare feet finding the well-worn path that winds between these magnificent trees. Each palm rises like a column in a natural cathedral, their trunks scarred and weathered by countless seasons, yet standing proud and strong. The fronds high above create a living canopy, filtering the harsh midday light into a gentle, dancing pattern of gold and green that plays across the sandy ground. The sound of his footsteps is muffled by the soft earth beneath the palms, earth enriched by fallen dates and the patient work of time. Here and there, clusters of dates hang heavy from their stems, some still green and firm, others deepening to the rich amber that promises sweetness beyond measure. The sight of them reminds Hassan's stomach of its needs, and he finds his favorite resting place, a smooth stone that seems placed just so by nature's own design. Settling onto this natural seat, Hassan feels the coolness of the stone seep through his simple robes. He closes his eyes for a moment and listens. The sounds here are different from anywhere else in the world. The palm fronds whisper ancient songs as the desert breeze moves through them, a sound like gentle rain that never quite arrives. Somewhere in the distance, a dove calls to its mate, the sound soft and questioning in the drowsy heat of the day. From his leather pouch, Hassan draws forth his simple meal. The bread is still soft from this morning's baking, its crust golden and yielding to his touch. He tears a piece carefully, savoring the wheaten smell that rises to meet him. This bread was made from grain that grew along the blessed Nile, ground by stones turned by patient hands, and baked in ovens that have fed Cairo's children for more years than anyone can remember. Next come the olives, each one a small miracle of flavor. They glisten with oil that catches the filtered sunlight, and when Hassan bites into one, the taste carries hints of the earth where the olive tree grew, of morning mist and evening dew, of the careful hands that picked each one at just the perfect moment of ripeness. The salt upon them speaks of distant seas and the long journey these treasures made to reach this quiet grove. But the sweetest gift of all hangs just within reach above his head. Hassan stands and stretches toward a cluster of dates that dangle like jewels from their parent palm. His fingers close around one, then another, feeling their sun-warmed skin yield slightly to his touch. These dates are ready to share their concentrated sweetness, their gift of the desert sun transformed into something wonderful and nourishing. He settles back onto his stone seat and bites into the first date. The flavor bursts across his tongue like liquid honey, mixed with the very essence of sunshine. The flesh is tender, almost melting, and as he chews slowly, he can taste the long months of patient growing, the endless days of desert heat that transformed simple moisture and sunlight into this perfect sweetness. Above him, the palm fronds continue their gentle conversation with the breeze. The sound is hypnotic, soothing, like the breathing of some great, peaceful creature. Hassan finds his own breathing slowing to match this rhythm, his shoulders releasing tension he didn't even know he carried. The simple act of eating becomes a meditation, each bite a moment of gratitude for the abundance that surrounds him. A butterfly drifts through the grove, its wings catching fragments of sunlight as it moves from shadow to shadow. Hassan watches its unhurried flight, marveling at how something so delicate can navigate the vast desert, finding its way to these pockets of green life scattered like emeralds across the endless sand. The heat beyond the palm grove shimmers and dances, creating mirages that make the distant buildings of Cairo waver like reflections in water. But here, in this cool sanctuary, time moves differently. It flows like honey, thick and golden, allowing Hassan to savor each moment, each flavor, each whisper of wind through the ancient palms. As he finishes his meal, Hassan leans back against his favorite palm, feeling the rough bark against his spine like an old friend's embrace. The tree has weathered countless storms, countless seasons of drought and plenty, and it shares its strength with him now. His eyelids grow heavy in the peaceful warmth, and the sounds of the grove begin to blend into a natural lullaby that speaks of rest, of contentment, of harmony with the ancient rhythms of the desert. The morning sun filters through the latticed archway as Hassan leads Master Yusuf deeper into the hidden gardens of Cairo. The elderly calligrapher moves slowly, his weathered hands trailing along the cool stone walls, fingers accustomed to holding reed pens now tracing the ancient carvings that decorate this sacred space. His eyes, though tired from years of careful work, still sparkle with the curiosity that has driven him to create some of the most beautiful manuscripts in all of Egypt. They enter a secluded corner of the garden, where climbing jasmine creates a natural canopy overhead. The sweet fragrance drifts down like invisible silk, wrapping around them in the gentle morning air. Master Yusuf pauses, breathing deeply, letting the perfume fill his lungs and calm his restless spirit. For weeks now, he has struggled with his latest commission, a poem about divine love that refuses to flow from his pen with the grace it deserves. Hassan gestures toward a marble bench positioned beneath a sprawling fig tree, its broad leaves creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the ground below. As they settle themselves on the cool stone, the calligrapher's gaze is drawn upward to the intricate network of branches above. Something in their natural curves reminds him of the flowing lines he creates with his brush, the way Arabic letters connect and flow across parchment like water finding its course. Look closely at how the vine climbs, Hassan says softly, pointing to a tendril of morning glory that spirals around a nearby column. See how it moves in perfect curves, never forcing its way, always following the path that feels most natural. Each turn flows into the next, just as your letters flow across the page. Master Yusuf nods slowly, studying the elegant spiral. The vine's movement does indeed mirror the graceful sweeps of his calligraphy, the way each letter connects seamlessly to the next in an unbroken dance of meaning and beauty. He watches a butterfly land delicately on a cluster of purple blooms, its wings moving in gentle arcs that seem to trace invisible words in the morning air. The garden around them pulses with quiet life. Bees move drowsily from flower to flower, their path seemingly random yet somehow purposeful, like the careful spacing between words on a manuscript page. A fountain nearby provides a gentle percussion, water droplets catching the light as they fall, each one a small miracle of reflection and movement. As Master Yusuf observes this natural symphony, he begins to understand what has been blocking his artistic flow. He has been trying too hard to force the words, to make them bend to his will rather than allowing them to find their own graceful path. Like the morning glory vine, his writing should follow its natural course, each letter growing organically from the one before. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves above, creating a soft rustling that sounds almost like pages turning. The calligrapher closes his eyes and listens to this whispered conversation between wind and foliage, feeling his shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. When he opens his eyes again, he sees Hassan watching him with knowing smile. The garden teaches us patience, Hassan explains, his voice barely above a whisper. Each plant grows at its own pace, following ancient rhythms we cannot hurry. Your art follows these same rhythms. Trust in the natural flow, and the words will come when they are ready. They sit together in companionable silence, watching the play of light through leaves, the gentle dance of insects among the flowers, the slow unfurling of rose petals as the sun climbs higher. Master Yusuf feels his mind clearing, like sediment settling in still water. The pressure he has been carrying dissolves into the peaceful morning air. A pair of doves coos softly from their perch in an olive tree, their voices creating a gentle melody that seems to echo the rhythm of poetry itself. The calligrapher finds himself mentally composing lines about this moment, words about patience and growth, about the way beauty emerges naturally when given proper care and time. As the sun reaches its gentle morning peak, Master Yusuf rises from the bench feeling renewed. The garden has given him exactly what he needed, not answers, but a reminder to trust in the natural process of creation. His fingers itch to hold his reed pen again, but now with anticipation rather than anxiety. The words will come, flowing like water, growing like vines, dancing like butterflies in the warm Cairo air. Hassan nods approvingly, recognizing the change in his friend's demeanor. Together they walk slowly back through the garden, the calligrapher's eyes now seeing inspiration in every curve of every leaf, every graceful arc of every flower stem reaching toward the light. The afternoon sun filters through the canopy of orange trees, casting dappled shadows across the stone pathway that winds through the heart of Hassan's hidden garden. Each tree stands like a faithful sentinel, their branches heavy with the promise of sweet fruit and adorned with clusters of pristine white blossoms that seem to glow in the gentle light. The air is thick with their perfume, a scent so rich and intoxicating that it seems to wrap itself around you like silk. Hassan moves between the trees with the quiet reverence of a man who has spent decades learning their language. His weathered hands hold a pair of bronze pruning shears, their metal warmed by years of use and polished smooth by countless careful cuts. There is no hurry in his movements, no sense of urgency. Time seems to flow differently here in this sanctuary, where the rhythm of growth and seasons dictates the pace of all things. He approaches the first tree in the row, pausing to study its form with eyes that see not just what is, but what could be. His fingers trace along a branch that grows too close to its neighbor, understanding instinctively how the morning sun will move across these leaves, where the afternoon light will pool, and which branches will bear the heaviest fruit come harvest time. With a gentle snip, he removes the wayward branch, and immediately the tree seems to breathe easier, its remaining limbs able to reach toward the light without competition. The sound of the shears through green wood is soft, almost musical, followed by the whisper of falling leaves and the gentle thud of severed branches landing on the earth below. Each cut is deliberate, purposeful, made with the knowledge that comes only from years of patient observation. Hassan knows that in pruning, he is not taking from the tree, but giving to it, creating space for new growth, encouraging the flow of sap to where it will do the most good, shaping the tree's future seasons of abundance. White petals drift down around him like the gentlest snow, catching in his dark hair and settling on his shoulders like blessings from the trees themselves. Some float on the warm air currents, dancing in lazy spirals before coming to rest on the pathway stones, where they form a carpet of pristine beauty that will scent the evening air as visitors walk among the gardens. As Hassan moves to the second tree, a slight breeze stirs the branches overhead, and suddenly the air is filled with a shower of orange blossoms. They fall in slow motion, each petal catching the light as it spirals downward. The fragrance intensifies, becoming almost visible in the golden afternoon air. Hassan pauses in his work, closing his eyes and breathing deeply, allowing the perfume to fill his lungs and settle into his very being. He continues his methodical journey from tree to tree, each one receiving his careful attention. Here, he removes a cluster of small branches that grow inward toward the trunk, preventing air from circulating freely through the canopy. There, he shortens a vigorous shoot that has grown too tall, encouraging the tree to put its energy into developing fruit rather than reaching ever skyward. His movements are meditative, each cut a small prayer for the tree's well-being and future bounty. The pathway stones beneath his feet are warm from the sun, and as more blossoms fall, they create a fragrant carpet that releases its perfume with each step. The scent mingles with the earthy aroma of the rich soil, the green freshness of new leaves, and the underlying sweetness of oranges beginning to form in hidden clusters among the branches. A small fountain bubbles nearby, its water catching the light and adding a gentle melody to the afternoon. The sound mingles with the soft snip of the shears, the whisper of falling petals, and the distant call of birds that nest in the garden's protective embrace. Everything here exists in perfect harmony, a symphony of sight, sound, and scent that speaks of peace and timeless beauty. As Hassan tends to each tree, the sun continues its slow arc across the sky, the light growing richer and more golden with each passing moment. The orange blossoms continue their gentle descent, turning the garden pathway into a river of white petals that will, by evening, release their fragrance into the cooling air like incense rising from an ancient temple. In this hidden sanctuary, where time moves to the rhythm of growing things and the wisdom of patient hands, Hassan continues his sacred work, tending the orange trees that will, in their season, offer both beauty and sustenance to all who find their way to this peaceful corner of ancient Cairo. The morning sun filters through the date palms with a golden warmth that seems to slow time itself. Al-Kindi walks slowly along the polished limestone pathway, his weathered sandals making the softest whisper against the stone. Each step is deliberate, measured, as if he understands that wisdom cannot be rushed. The formal garden spreads before him in perfect geometric harmony, every line and curve calculated to please both eye and soul. Hassan moves beside him with the quiet grace of someone who has tended these gardens for decades. His calloused hands gesture gently toward the intricate patterns of herbs and flowering shrubs, each plant positioned according to principles passed down through generations of Persian and Egyptian gardeners. The morning air carries the mingled scents of jasmine, mint, and sweet basil, creating a natural perfume that seems to clear the mind and settle the heart. "Observe, my friend," Hassan says softly, his voice barely rising above the gentle murmur of the central fountain. "How the rosemary follows the path of the geometric star. Nothing here grows by accident. Each placement creates balance, each balance creates beauty, and each beauty reflects the greater harmony of creation." Al-Kindi nods slowly, his keen eyes tracing the mathematical precision embedded in the garden's design. Squares within circles, circles within octagons, each shape flowing into the next with seamless grace. The philosopher understands that he walks through a living manuscript, where the ancient knowledge of proportion and harmony has been written in leaf and flower rather than ink and papyrus. The pathway curves gently toward a raised bed, where purple lavender grows in perfect parallel lines. The spacing between each plant is exactly equal, creating a rhythm that the eye can follow like music made visible. Small channels of water run between the rows, their quiet burbling adding a liquid percussion to the garden's peaceful symphony. In Alexandria, Al-Kindi shares, his voice thoughtful and unhurried, "I once studied with a Greek master who taught that mathematics is the language through which the divine speaks to creation. Here, walking among your carefully tended plants, I begin to understand what he meant. The golden ratio appears in the spiral of your rose petals. The perfect symmetry of your jasmine blooms echoes the harmony of celestial spheres." Hassan smiles, pausing beside a fountain where geometric tiles create an endless pattern of interlocking stars. The water flows over these tiles in thin sheets, creating a mirror that reflects the dancing shadows of olive branches overhead. My grandfather taught me that gardens are not merely places of beauty, but classrooms where nature instructs those patient enough to observe and listen. The same principles that govern the movement of planets also determine where we place our herbs and flowers. They continue their slow journey deeper into the garden, where the formal geometric patterns gradually give way to more flowing, organic arrangements. Here, the designer's hand is less obvious, but no less present. Climbing roses follow the natural curve of ancient walls, their blooms creating cascades of pink and white that seem to flow like gentle waterfalls of color. Al-Kindi pauses beside a small grove of pomegranate trees, their branches heavy with ruby-red fruit. The dappled shade beneath creates a natural reading alcove, where stone benches invite contemplation. The ancients knew something we sometimes forget in our pursuit of complex knowledge. He reflects that true understanding comes not from wrestling with ideas, but from allowing ourselves to be taught by the patterns already present in the world around us. The air grows warmer as the sun climbs higher, but the garden's design provides natural cooling through its network of water channels and strategically placed shade trees. Hassan leads his guest toward a circular meditation area where 8 pathways converge like spokes of a wheel. At the center, a single olive tree spreads its silver-green branches in perfect symmetry, its ancient trunk speaking of centuries of patient growth. This tree was planted by my great-grandfather, Hassan explains, running his palm along its smooth bark. He said that every garden needs a heart, a place where all the mathematical precision and careful planning gives way to something deeper, something that reminds us that while we can calculate and design and arrange, true beauty comes from allowing space for mystery, for the unexpected gift that grows beyond our planning. As their walk draws to a gentle close, the 2 men stand in comfortable silence beneath the olive tree's spreading canopy. The geometric patterns of the formal garden stretch out before them, each line and curve now seeming less like mathematical exercise and more like visual poetry. The morning has deepened into something profound and peaceful, a communion between human wisdom and nature's ancient teachings, played out in the living sanctuary of this hidden Cairo garden. The afternoon sun hung heavy in the sky when Hassan heard the familiar shuffle of sandaled feet approaching along the garden's eastern path. He looked up from where he knelt beside a row of mint plants, their leaves releasing their cool fragrance into the warm air. Old Abdullah appeared around the corner of the pomegranate trees, moving with the unhurried grace of someone who had learned long ago that the desert rewards patience above all else. Abdullah carried his worn leather satchel across one shoulder, and in his weathered hands, he held a clay smoker that trailed wisps of sweet-smelling herbs. The old bee master's face was deeply lined from years under the sun, but his eyes held the gentle wisdom of someone who understood the desert's most delicate creatures. "Peace be upon you, Hassan," Abdullah called softly, his voice carrying the musical cadence of the old quarter. "The bees have been calling to me all morning. I think they know it's time." Hassan rose slowly, brushing the fragrant earth from his palms. "And upon you, peace, old friend. They've been humming more loudly these past few days. The lavender is at its peak." Together, the 2 men walked deeper into the garden, past the fountain where water trickled gently over smooth stones, past the date palms that cast their feathered shadows across the pathways. The air grew thick with the perfume of lavender as they approached the hidden corner where Abdullah's clay hives nestled among the purple-flowered bushes. The hives were works of art themselves, each one shaped by Abdullah's own hands from Nile clay mixed with chopped straw. They sat like ancient vessels among the lavender, their surfaces weathered to the color of desert sand. From within came a sound like distant thunder, made soft the contented humming of thousands of bees going about their ancient work. Abdullah set down his satchel and lit his smoker with practiced movements. The herbs inside dried lavender, chamomile, and rosemary began to smolder, releasing their calming fragrance into the air. The bees, sensing his presence, responded to his arrival with gentle curiosity rather than alarm. They had known Abdullah's hands and voice for many seasons. "Watch how they move," Abdullah murmured to Hassan as he lifted the woven cover from the first hive. "See how they dance. Each movement has meaning. They are telling their sisters where the sweetest flowers bloom." Hassan moved closer, mesmerized by the sight. Inside the clay vessel, thousands of bees moved in patterns that seemed both random and purposeful. Some clustered around the honeycomb they had built, their wings catching the filtered sunlight. Others prepared to venture out into the garden, their bodies dusted with golden pollen. "They teach us patience," Abdullah continued, his hands moving slowly as he examined each frame of honeycomb. "The nectar they gather today will not become honey for many days. They understand that sweetness comes to those who wait, who work steadily without haste." The old bee master's movements were like a meditation. He spoke to the bees in soft, rhythmic tones, explaining what he was doing as if they were old friends who deserved such courtesy. Some bees landed on his arms and hands, walking across his sun-darkened skin without fear or aggression. Hassan watched as Abdullah carefully extracted a portion of honeycomb, the amber liquid catching the light like liquid gold. The scent that rose from it was complex lavender and wildflower, with hints of the desert herbs that grew wild beyond the garden walls. "This honey," Abdullah said, holding up the comb so Hassan could see the perfect hexagonal cells, "carries the story of our whole garden. Every flower your grandfather planted, every bloom you tend now, it's all here, transformed into something that will nourish and heal." As they worked together, checking each hive in turn, the afternoon grew drowsier. The sun's angle softened, casting longer shadows across the lavender rows. The bees' humming seemed to deepen, becoming part of the garden's symphony along with the trickling fountain and the whisper of wind through palm fronds. "They sleep too, you know," Abdullah said as he covered the last hive. "When evening comes, they cluster together in their home, sharing warmth, sharing the day's experiences. They dream, perhaps, of tomorrow's flowers." Hassan found himself yawning, infected by the peaceful rhythm of the afternoon. The work was done, the bees were content, and the garden held that perfect stillness that comes just before evening prayer time. Abdullah packed his tools slowly, each movement deliberate and calm. "Until next time, my small friends," he whispered to the hives. The humming seemed to soften in response, as if the bees were settling into their own version of afternoon rest. As the bee master's footsteps faded along the garden path, Hassan remained among the lavender, listening to the gentle music of his grandfather's bees, feeling the deep peace that comes from witnessing ancient rhythms still turning in the heart of the bustling city. The ancient stones of Cairo hold the day's warmth like a gentle embrace as the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon. In the hidden garden tucked away from the bustling streets, Hassan feels the familiar pull of evening approaching, that sacred time when the world pauses to acknowledge the divine. The call to prayer drifts across the rooftops, a melodious voice rising from the minaret of the nearby mosque. The sound carries on the warm air, weaving between the date palms and settling among the flower beds like a blessing. Hassan has been tending these gardens for more than 30 years, and still, this moment never fails to stir something deep within his soul. He sets down his watering vessel beside a cluster of evening primrose, their tightly furled buds waiting for darkness to reveal their pale, moon-colored faces. These flowers understand the rhythm of prayer time. Hassan thinks to himself, they too know when to open themselves to the mysteries of the night. The irrigation channels gurgle softly as water flows from one terrace to the next, following pathways carved by generations of gardeners before him. The sound is like a quiet conversation between old friends, constant and comforting. Hassan has learned to read the language of these waters, understanding by their song whether the flow is strong or needs adjustment, whether the roots below are drinking deeply or thirsting for more. As the muezzin's voice reaches the sacred phrase, Allahu Akbar, Hassan spreads his prayer rug on a patch of soft grass beneath the jasmine arbor. The white flowers above him release their perfume more generously as evening approaches, as if they too are preparing for this moment of devotion. He faces toward Mecca, his weathered hands placed gently on his knees, and begins his evening prayers. The garden seems to breathe around him, settling into its twilight rhythm. A nightingale calls from somewhere in the pomegranate trees, its liquid notes harmonizing with the distant sound of prayer. The leaves of the lemon trees rustle softly in the evening breeze, and Hassan can smell their clean, bright scent mixing with the deeper fragrance of roses that climb the garden walls. As he moves through the familiar movements of prayer, Hassan's awareness expands to encompass the entire garden. He feels the presence of every plant, every flower that will soon open to the stars. The 4 o'clocks are beginning to unfurl their trumpet-shaped blossoms in shades of pink and yellow. The moonflowers on the far wall are preparing for their nightly display, their heart-shaped leaves already turning toward the darkening sky. Between the verses of his prayers, Hassan hears the gentle splash of the fountain at the garden's center. The water cascades from one marble basin to another, creating ripples that catch the last light of day. Goldfish move lazily in the deeper pools, their scales flashing orange and white beneath the surface. Even they seem to move more slowly now, as if respecting this sacred time. The air grows cooler as the sun disappears behind the ancient walls of the city. Hassan can feel the garden's gratitude for this respite from the day's heat. The soil releases its stored warmth slowly, creating tiny currents of air that carry the mingled scents of herbs and flowers. Mint and basil from the kitchen gardens, roses and jasmine from the ornamental beds, and underneath it all, the rich, loamy smell of earth that has been loved and tended for centuries. When his prayers are complete, Hassan remains kneeling for a moment longer, listening to the garden's evening symphony. Crickets have begun their gentle chorus among the lavender bushes. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls softly. The evening primrose beside him are beginning to show the first pale edges of their petals, preparing for their nightly opening. He rises slowly, his knees protesting only mildly after decades of this evening ritual. The prayer rug is folded carefully and set aside. Hassan moves through the garden paths, checking the water levels in the channels, deadheading a few spent roses, his movements automatic and gentle. The first stars appear in the deepening sky, and Hassan knows that soon the night-blooming flowers will begin their show. The evening primrose will open fully, their pale faces turned upward like small moons. The night-blooming cereus, if it chooses tonight for its rare flowering, will unfold its magnificent white petals for just a few precious hours. As he walks toward the garden gate, Hassan pauses beside the jasmine arbor where he prayed. The flowers seem to glow in the gathering dusk, their white petals luminous against the dark leaves. Tomorrow will bring another day of tending, another evening of prayer among the flowers, another opportunity to witness the garden's quiet miracles. The call to prayer fades into memory, but its peace remains, settling over the garden like a gentle blanket of stars. The evening air in Hassan's hidden garden carries the weight of anticipation, thick with jasmine and the distant murmur of the Nile. He sits cross-legged on a worn carpet beside the ancient cereus, its tall, sculptural form rising like a prayer into the deepening twilight. The plant has stood sentinel in this corner of the garden for longer than anyone can remember, its thick, waxy stems reaching toward the heavens in slow, patient arcs. Tonight is the night of the full moon, and Hassan knows what miracle awaits. The cereus appears unremarkable during daylight hours, a collection of green columns that most visitors would pass without notice. But Hassan has learned the secrets whispered by the old gardeners, stories passed down through generations like precious seeds. Once each month, when the moon swells to fullness, this humble desert dweller transforms into something extraordinary. As darkness settles over Cairo like a gentle blanket, the first stars begin to pierce the indigo sky. Hassan lights a small oil lamp, its flame dancing with the evening breeze, casting warm shadows across the garden walls. The scent of cooling earth mingles with night-blooming jasmine, creating an atmosphere of hushed reverence. He watches the cereus with the patience of one who understands that nature keeps her own time. Hours pass in peaceful meditation. The sounds of the city fade to a distant murmur beyond the garden walls. An owl calls softly from somewhere in the date palms, and water trickles steadily from the fountain at the garden's heart. Then, as the full moon climbs higher, painting everything in silver light, Hassan notices the first sign. A small bulge appears at the tip of one of the cereus stems, barely visible in the moonlight. His breath catches, and he leans forward slightly, careful not to disturb the sacred moment unfolding before him. The bud grows larger, swelling like a pearl emerging from its shell. What seemed impossible just moments before now reveals itself as inevitable. The tight green casing begins to split, revealing glimpses of pure white petals folded within. The transformation happens slowly, almost imperceptibly, like watching the moon itself traverse the sky. Hassan settles deeper into stillness, becoming part of the garden's nighttime symphony. A gentle breeze stirs the palm fronds overhead, creating soft whispers that seem to encourage the flower in its emergence. The fountain's steady rhythm provides a backdrop of liquid music, while somewhere in the distance, a night bird offers its melodic contribution to this nocturnal concert. The cereus continues its patient unfurling. Each petal emerges like a dancer stepping into moonlight, spreading outward in perfect symmetry. The flower grows larger than Hassan's outstretched hand, its white petals luminous against the dark night, as if capturing and reflecting every ray of moonlight that touches its surface. And then comes the fragrance. It begins as a whisper on the evening air, so subtle that Hassan wonders if he might be imagining it. But gradually, the scent grows stronger, an intoxicating blend of honey and starlight, sweet as desert dates and mysterious as midnight. The fragrance seems to contain all the secrets of the night, all the dreams that bloom in darkness and fade with dawn. Hassan closes his eyes and breathes deeply, letting the extraordinary perfume fill his senses. It speaks of distant oases and ancient trade routes, of caravans crossing endless dunes under star-filled skies. The scent carries whispers of romance and adventure, of stories told around campfires when the world was young. When he opens his eyes, the transformation is complete. The cereus stands in full glory, its enormous white flower opened like a star fallen to earth. The petals shimmer with dewdrops that catch the moonlight like tiny diamonds, and the golden center glows with an inner light that seems almost supernatural. Hassan knows this moment is precious beyond measure. By morning, the magnificent bloom will begin to close, and within hours it will fade completely, leaving only memory and the promise of next month's miracle. Such is the way of the night-blooming cereus, a reminder that the most beautiful moments are often the most fleeting. He sits in grateful silence, absorbing every detail of this nocturnal gift. The way moonlight pools in each petal's curve, the gentle trembling of the flower in the night breeze, the gradual shift of shadows as the moon continues its ancient journey across the heavens. This is why the old gardeners tended their secrets so carefully, why they passed down the knowledge of when and where such wonders could be witnessed. The night deepens around them, guardian and flower existing together in perfect harmony. Hassan feels a profound sense of connection to the countless generations who have waited beside night-blooming plants, who have understood that some of nature's greatest gifts are reserved for those patient enough to witness them in darkness. In this moment, surrounded by the cereus's ethereal beauty and heavenly fragrance, Hassan is reminded that magic still exists in the world. Quiet, patient magic that unfolds only for those willing to wait and watch with wonder. The night air carries the whispered secrets of 1,000 healing plants, as Hassan steps quietly onto the worn stone path that winds through the herb garden. Above him, the desert sky spreads like dark silk studded with diamonds, each star a distant lantern casting its gentle light upon the carefully tended plots below. The moon, a silver crescent hanging low on the horizon, bathes the garden in soft luminescence that transforms the familiar daytime landscape into something magical and serene. Hassan's bare feet know every stone of this path, every gentle rise and shallow depression worn smooth by countless nocturnal visits. The herbs around him seem to breathe in rhythm with the cooling earth, releasing their precious oils into the night air as the desert heat slowly surrenders to darkness. The scent of chamomile drifts past him first, sweet and apple-like, followed by the clean, sharp fragrance of mint that grows in neat rows beside the small irrigation channels. He pauses beside a patch of lavender, its purple spikes barely visible in the starlight, but unmistakable in their honeyed perfume. Hassan reaches down to brush his fingertips against the delicate flowers, feeling the slight dampness of evening dew that has begun to settle upon the garden. The plant responds to his touch with a deeper release of fragrance, as if welcoming this old friend who has walked among these healing herbs for so many years. The constellation of Orion stretches across the southern sky, its bright belt of 3 stars seeming to mirror the careful arrangement of sage plants that Hassan tends with such devotion. He has often noticed these patterns, the way the heavens above seem reflected in the ordered beauty of the garden below. Each plant has its place, its purpose, its season of greatest potency, just as each star follows its ancient path across the dome of night. Hassan moves deeper into the herb garden, past clusters of rosemary that release their pine-like scent with each gentle breeze. The night brings out qualities in these plants that the harsh desert sun keeps hidden during the day. Now, in the cool darkness, they offer their true gifts freely, filling the air with layers of fragrance that seem to weave together like threads in an invisible tapestry. A small fountain gurgles softly at the garden's heart, its water catching starlight and throwing it back in tiny, dancing reflections. Hassan approaches this central point where several paths converge, remembering how his grandfather first brought him here as a child, teaching him the names and properties of each plant under this same canopy of stars. The old man's voice seems to echo still in the gentle splash of water over stone, passing down wisdom as constant as the turning of the seasons. The air grows cooler as the night deepens, and Hassan pulls his light robe closer around his shoulders, yet he feels no urgency to return indoors. These moments of communion with the garden at night have become sacred to him, a time when the healing plants seem most willing to share their secrets. He can almost hear them whispering in languages older than human speech, their roots drawing sustenance from earth that has supported life for thousands of years. Near the garden's eastern edge, where the first light of dawn will soon appear, Hassan tends a small plot of chamomile that his daughter planted the previous spring. The delicate white flowers seem to glow with their own inner light, nodding gently in the night breeze like tiny stars that have chosen to bloom upon the earth. He remembers her careful hands placing each seedling, her questions about which herbs heal the body and which soothe the troubled mind. As Hassan completes his circuit of the herb garden, he notices how the patterns of plants seem to echo the constellations wheeling slowly overhead. The clusters of basil mirror the Pleiades, while the long rows of mint follow the curve of the Milky Way as it arches across the desert sky. This harmony between earth and heaven fills him with a deep sense of peace that settles into his bones like the cool night air. The herbs around him continue their silent work, drawing moisture from the cooling air, preparing their healing oils for harvest, growing stronger in the darkness. Hassan knows that by morning, the chamomile will be perfect for gathering, the sage ready to be bundled and dried, the mint at its most potent for the healing teas that bring comfort to his neighbors. Standing there among the fragrant plants, with starlight painting silver patterns on the leaves around him, Hassan feels himself part of an ancient rhythm that connects him to generations of gardeners who have walked these paths before him. The night holds its own wisdom, and in the herb garden, surrounded by the gentle breathing of growing things, that wisdom settles upon him like dew upon the waiting earth. The morning sun filters through the date palm fronds as Hassan carefully tends to the climbing roses that cascade down the garden's eastern wall. Their petals, still damp with dew, catch the golden light like scattered rubies against the weathered stone. The air carries the mingled scents of jasmine and mint, creating a natural perfume that seems to slow time itself. From across the garden courtyard, footsteps approach on the worn sandstone path. Hassan looks up to see Marco, the Venetian trader who arrived yesterday evening with his caravan. The man's weathered face speaks of countless journeys across desert sands and mountain passes, yet his eyes hold the bright curiosity of someone who finds wonder in each new place. "Good morning, my friend," Marco calls softly, his accent lending musical notes to the Arabic words. He carries a small leather satchel, its contents clinking gently as he walks. "I could not sleep past dawn in such a beautiful place. Your garden rivals any I have seen from the Bosphorus to the Silk Road." Hassan smiles, his hands never pausing in their gentle work among the thorny stems. "You honor us with such words. I have heard that Venice herself is built upon water like a floating garden. Tell me, what grows in such a place?" Marco settles onto a low stone bench beneath the climbing roses, opening his satchel to reveal packets of seeds wrapped in silk cloth. Each small bundle is tied with different colored threads: red, blue, gold, like tiny treasures from distant lands. Ah, Venice is indeed magical, but different from this desert paradise. We grow our flowers in window boxes and rooftop gardens, stealing space from stone and sea. But it is not Venice I wish to speak of today. He unwraps a packet of deep blue seeds, rolling them gently in his palm. These come from the gardens of Constantinople, where the Sultan's gardeners tend roses that bloom in colors I had never imagined. Imagine, if you will, roses the color of amethysts, their petals so deep purple they appear black at twilight. Hassan's eyes widen with wonder as he examines the seeds. The morning breeze stirs the garden, carrying the sound of distant fountains and the soft cooing of doves in the olive trees. Such colors would complement our desert roses beautifully. Do they require much water? Less than you might think, Marco replies, his voice taking on the rhythm of a storyteller. The gardeners told me they thrive in heat, drawing strength from the sun, much like your date palms. But that is just one garden among many I have seen. He reaches for another packet, this one containing seeds like tiny golden pearls. In Samarkand, beyond the mountains where the winter winds blow cold, I discovered a garden where flowers bloom white as fresh snow, even in the height of summer. The local people call them moon flowers, for they open only at night and fill the darkness with fragrance sweeter than honey. Hassan pauses in his work, completely captivated. The climbing roses seem to lean in, as if they too wish to hear tales of their distant cousins. A butterfly, its wings painted in shades of orange and gold, alights on a nearby bloom, adding its silent beauty to the scene. "And what of the desert gardens?" Hassan asks. "Surely you have seen others like ours in your travels." Marco's expression grows thoughtful as he unwraps a third packet, revealing seeds that shimmer like tiny emeralds. "In Damascus, I stayed in a merchant's house where the courtyard garden defied the desert itself. They had discovered a way to grow climbing vines that produced flowers in 3 seasons. Spring brought white blossoms, summer revealed yellow ones, and autumn surprised all with deep red blooms. The same vine, the same roots, yet ever-changing beauty. The morning light has grown stronger now, painting the garden walls in warm amber hues. Hassan carefully accepts the packets of seeds, holding them as reverently as precious gems. These gifts will bring new life to our hidden oasis. Perhaps in seasons to come, travelers will speak of Cairo's gardens as you now speak of Constantinople and Samarkand. "I have no doubt of it," Marco replies, his voice soft with certainty. Gardens have a way of calling to each other across the miles. Seeds carry not just the promise of flowers, but stories of the places they have been. When these bloom, they will remember their homeland while creating beauty in yours. As the two men sit in comfortable silence, the garden seems to hum with new possibilities. The morning breeze carries promises of future springs when purple roses might climb alongside red ones, when night-blooming flowers might perfume the darkness, and when Cairo's hidden gardens might be spoken of in distant bazaars as places of wonder rivaling any along the ancient Silk Road. The sun climbs higher, and somewhere in the distance, the gentle sound of water flowing over stone continues its eternal, soothing rhythm. The first whisper of dawn has not yet touched the eastern horizon when Hassan's eyes flutter open in his simple quarters beside the garden. His body has learned the rhythm of the desert, waking naturally in those precious moments before the sun claims the sky. The air carries that distinctive coolness that only exists in the hour before sunrise, when the desert exhales the last breath of night. He rises slowly, his weathered feet finding the smooth stone floor. Through the narrow window, the garden lies in perfect stillness, bathed in the soft silver light of stars that will soon fade. Hassan wraps his simple robe around his shoulders and steps outside, his movements deliberate and quiet, as if entering a sacred space. The garden greets him with its morning song, not of birds, for they will come later, but of silence so complete it feels alive. Hassan's bare feet follow the familiar path between the raised beds, each step carefully placed to avoid disturbing even the smallest seedling. The desert air carries the faintest hint of jasmine and mint, scents that have gathered strength through the cool night hours. As he moves deeper into the garden, Hassan notices the first miracle beginning. On the broad leaves of the fig trees, tiny pearls of water are forming, appearing as if summoned by some invisible hand. The desert, so seemingly harsh and dry, is performing its nightly alchemy, drawing moisture from the air itself and gifting it to the waiting plants. Hassan pauses beside a cluster of date palms, their fronds creating gentle shadows in the starlight. He watches in wonder as droplets materialize along the edges of leaves, growing fuller and rounder until they tremble with their own weight. Some cling to the surface like liquid diamonds, while others begin their slow journey downward, following the natural channels that guide them to the thirsty roots below. The roses, his beloved desert roses, receive this gift with particular grace. Hassan kneels beside the nearest bush, observing how the dew settles into the cup of each petal, collecting in the heart of the flowers like nature's own chalice. The pale pink blooms, closed in peaceful sleep, seem to glow with their own inner light as the moisture gathers around them. Moving to the herb garden, Hassan finds the mint leaves heavy with dew, their surfaces transformed into mirrors that reflect the fading stars. He breathes in deeply, and the moisture-laden air carries the concentrated essence of each plant: basil, thyme, rosemary, their fragrances made richer by the night's humidity. The oregano plants droop slightly under the weight of accumulated droplets, their small leaves bowed as if in prayer. Hassan continues his quiet pilgrimage through the garden, witnessing this daily miracle in each corner. The broad leaves of the squash plants have become collectors of dew, their surfaces designed by nature to funnel every precious drop toward the base of the plant. The delicate fennel fronds shimmer with countless tiny beads of water, creating an almost otherworldly display of natural jewelry. As he reaches the center of the garden, where the ancient fountain sits silent and still, Hassan settles onto the stone bench. From here, he can see the entire garden transformed by dew into something ethereal and dreamlike. The morning air is so still that not a single leaf moves, allowing the water to gather undisturbed on every surface. The eastern sky begins to show the faintest suggestion of color, not yet the warm gold of sunrise, but the gentle softening that comes before. Hassan knows that soon, as the sun rises, this precious moisture will begin to evaporate, returning to the air from which it came. But for now, in these sacred moments of early morning, the desert garden drinks deeply from the gift of night. He closes his eyes and listens to the almost inaudible sound of droplets falling from leaf to earth, a gentle percussion that speaks of abundance in the midst of scarcity. Each drop carries with it the promise of life, the assurance that even in the harshest environments, nature provides for those who wait patiently and watch carefully. Hassan remains still on his bench, becoming part of the garden's morning meditation. The dew settles on his own skin, cool and refreshing, as if the garden itself is welcoming him into its daily ritual of renewal. In the growing light, he can see that every plant, from the smallest herb to the tallest palm, participates in this quiet celebration of moisture and life. The minutes pass like slow, steady breaths, each one bringing the garden closer to its full awakening. Soon, the first rays of sunlight will touch the eastern wall, and the day's work will begin. But for now, Hassan sits in grateful silence, witnessing once again the desert's most gentle miracle, the morning dew, that transforms his hidden garden into a realm of silver and dreams. The morning sun cast long shadows across the garden courtyard when young Khalil first appeared at the arched entrance, his brown eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. He could not have been more than 12 years old, his dark hair still tousled from sleep, wearing the simple white robe of a student from the nearby madrasa. In his small hands, he clutched a worn leather satchel that seemed far too large for his slight frame. Hassan looked up from where he knelt beside a patch of newly sprouted mint, his weathered hands pausing in their gentle cultivation of the soil. The boy stood there quietly, respectfully, waiting to be acknowledged as he had surely been taught by his teachers at the School of Learning. "Peace be upon you, young scholar," Hassan said softly, his voice carrying the warmth of someone who had once been young and eager himself. "What brings you to our sanctuary of growing things on this beautiful morning?" Khalil stepped forward with careful reverence, bowing his head slightly. "Peace be upon you as well, Master Gardener. My teacher, Ibn Rashid, has spoken of the miraculous gardens hidden within these walls. He says you possess knowledge of how to make the desert bloom, how to coax life from sand and stone. I have come to ask if you might teach me these ancient ways." Hassan smiled, remembering another boy who had once stood in this very spot, overwhelmed by the green abundance that seemed impossible in the heart of the desert. He gestured for Khalil to sit beside him on the low stone bench beneath the pomegranate tree, where the filtered sunlight danced through the leaves in patterns of gold and emerald. "Tell me, young Khalil, what do you know of patience?" Hassan asked, his hands returning to their gentle work among the mint stems. The boy considered this carefully, his brow furrowing in thought. "My teacher says patience is the companion of wisdom, that all great things grow slowly, like the date palm that takes years to bear its first fruit." "Your teacher is wise," Hassan nodded approvingly. "Here in the garden, patience is not merely a virtue, it is the foundation upon which all life rests. Watch." Hassan's movements were deliberate and meditative as he showed Khalil the art of composting, explaining how kitchen scraps and fallen leaves transformed into rich, dark earth through the alchemy of time and moisture. His voice was gentle as honey as he described how each handful of decomposed matter would feed the roots of future flowers, how the cycle of decay and renewal was the heartbeat of the garden itself. "You see this pile of date pits and melon rinds?" Hassan asked, stirring the fragrant mixture with a wooden paddle worn smooth by years of use. 6 months ago, this was refuse. Now it becomes the very foundation of life for our roses and jasmine. Khalil watched with fascination as Hassan demonstrated the careful layering brown leaves alternating with green clippings, a handful of soil, a sprinkle of precious water. The compost heap steamed gently in the morning air, releasing the earthy scent of transformation. Next, Hassan led the boy to a shaded alcove where dozens of small clay pots lined wooden shelves, each containing seeds saved from the previous season's harvest. His fingers, stained green from years of garden work, selected a few sunflower seeds from a ceramic jar painted with blue geometric patterns. Each seed carries within it the memory of its parent plant, Hassan explained, placing one of the large, striped seeds in Khalil's palm. "It knows when to sleep, when to wake, when to reach toward the light. Our task is simply to provide the conditions for this ancient wisdom to unfold. As they worked together, preparing small pots with the rich compost mixture, Hassan found himself transported back to his own youth, when his grandfather's patient hands had first shown him how to cradle a seedling, how to judge the moisture of soil by its color and scent. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious, his questions thoughtful and genuine. "Master Hassan," Khalil asked as they watered the newly planted seeds with a copper watering can, "how do you know which plants will thrive in the desert heat?" Hassan paused, considering how to share a lifetime of observation in words a young mind could grasp. "The plants teach us, if we learn to listen. See how the desert sage keeps its leaves small and silver. It is showing us how to conserve water. Notice how the climbing jasmine seeks the coolest corners of the wall. It is demonstrating the wisdom of finding shelter." As the morning sun climbed higher, warming the garden air and releasing the mingled fragrances of mint, rosemary, and orange blossom, Hassan felt a deep contentment settle over him. Here was the next keeper of these ancient secrets, eager to learn, patient enough to watch seeds transform into flowers. The garden would continue its quiet work of bringing beauty to the desert, one careful lesson at a time. The stone steps descend into cool darkness, each footfall echoing softly against ancient walls that have witnessed centuries of Cairo's changing face above. Hassan carries his brass lantern carefully, its warm glow dancing across limestone blocks worn smooth by countless hands. The air grows cooler with each step downward, carrying with it the musical whisper of moving water that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. This is the heart of the garden's mystery, the hidden chambers that few have ever seen. Here, 20 feet beneath the sun-warmed pathways, where jasmine blooms and date palms sway, lies the true source of the oasis that has flourished above for over 800 years. The underground springs that feed the fountains flow through channels carved by master craftsmen, whose names are lost to time, their legacy written only in the perfect mathematics of water finding its way to light. Hassan pauses at the bottom of the stairs, holding his lantern high. The chamber stretches before him like a cathedral of stone, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadows that seem to breathe with the rhythm of flowing water. Columns thick as ancient trees support the weight of earth and garden above, their surfaces cool and damp with the eternal moisture that keeps this place alive. Between them, channels of clear water catch the lantern light and scatter it like liquid stars across the walls. The sound here is unlike anything in the world above. Not the cheerful splash of fountain jets or the gentle trickle of surface streams, but something deeper, more fundamental. It is the voice of the earth itself, speaking in the language of underground rivers that have flowed since before the pyramids cast their first shadows. Hassan moves slowly among the channels, listening to each note in this subterranean symphony, reading the water's song like sheet music written in liquid. Here, a slight gurgle tells him that sediment has begun to collect in the eastern channel. There, the pitch changes subtly, indicating that water pressure has shifted in the network that feeds the reflecting pool, where lotus flowers float like sleeping thoughts. Every sound carries meaning. Every change in the water's voice tells a story that only Hassan has learned to understand. His grandfather taught him this secret language during long afternoons in these chambers, when the old man's weathered hands would trace the paths of water and explain how each fountain above depended on the delicate balance maintained below. Hassan kneels beside a junction where 3 channels meet, setting his lantern on the stone ledge. The water here is crystal clear, so pure it seems to hold light rather than reflect it. He dips his fingers into the stream, feeling the cool current that has traveled from deep aquifers far beneath the desert floor. The water carries with it the memory of distant rains, of clouds that gathered over far mountains decades ago, of drops that soaked through sand and stone to find their way to this moment. This place, this gentle touch. With practiced movements, Hassan adjusts a bronze gate that controls the flow to the northern fountains. The metal is green with age, but moves smoothly on hinges that his family has maintained for generations. As he turns the wheel, he can hear the change echo through the entire system, a subtle shift in pressure that will, in moments, reach the surface above where fountain jets will dance slightly higher in their ancient choreography. The lantern flame flickers as a breath of air moves through the chamber, carrying with it the faint perfume of night-blooming cereus from the garden above. Even here, in this hidden world of stone and water, the boundary between underground and surface garden blurs. Roots of the oldest trees have found their way down through cracks in the stone, their pale tendrils drinking directly from the channels. The water feeds the roots anchor the soil supports the garden, and the garden shelters the entrance to these chambers. Everything connected, everything in balance. Hassan makes his final adjustments of the evening, fine-tuning the flow to each section of the garden with the precision of a musician tuning a beloved instrument. Tomorrow, visitors will walk the paths above, marveling at fountains that seem to spring from nowhere, pools that never empty despite the desert heat, flowers that bloom impossibly lush in this arid land. They will never suspect that 20 feet below their sandaled feet, this ancient system continues its patient work, as it has for centuries, as it will for centuries to come. The water sings its eternal song as Hassan climbs the stone steps back toward the surface, carrying with him the deep satisfaction of maintaining something beautiful, something lasting, something that connects the present moment to the wisdom of ages past. The afternoon sun filters through the pomegranate grove like liquid amber, casting dancing shadows on the dusty earth below. Hassan moves slowly between the ancient trees, their twisted branches heavy with the weight of ruby-red fruit that glows like lanterns in the golden light. Each pomegranate hangs perfectly round and full, their leathery skin burnished to a deep crimson that speaks of months spent ripening under Cairo's generous sun. He carries a woven basket made from palm fronds, its surface worn smooth by countless harvests before this one. The basket rests easily against his hip, as he examines each fruit with the practiced eye of someone who has tended these trees since childhood. His weathered hands reach up to cup a particularly large pomegranate, feeling its weight, testing the slight give that tells him it's perfectly ripe. With careful precision, Hassan twists the fruit gently until it releases from its stem with a soft pop. The pomegranate settles into his palm, warm from the sun, its surface slightly rough beneath his fingertips. He can almost feel the hundreds of seeds nestled within, each one a tiny jewel waiting to be discovered. The thought brings a quiet smile to his weathered face as he places the fruit tenderly in his basket. The sound of his footsteps is muffled by the soft earth as he moves to the next tree. Somewhere in the distance, a turtle dove calls out in its low, melodic voice, answered by another from across the garden. The breeze carries the faint scent of jasmine from a nearby wall, mixing with the earthy sweetness that rises from the pomegranate trees themselves. Hassan pauses at a particularly old tree, its trunk gnarled and thick with age. This tree has stood in this garden for longer than anyone can remember, its roots reaching deep into the fertile soil that has been nourished by the Nile's annual floods for generations. The pomegranates on this tree are especially large, their skin almost burgundy in the afternoon light. As he reaches for one of the higher fruits, Hassan notices a small crack along its side where the pomegranate has grown so full that its skin can barely contain the bounty within. Sweet tart juice has begun to seep from the crack, leaving a tiny ruby trail down the fruit's surface. He harvests this one with extra care, knowing that its juice will stain his fingers with the color of garnets. The crack widens slightly as he lifts the pomegranate, and a few drops of crimson juice fall onto his palm. The liquid is warm and sticky, with an aroma that is both floral and deeply fruity. Hassan brings his stained fingers to his nose, inhaling the rich scent that speaks of summer's end and autumn's gentle approach. He continues his harvest, moving with the unhurried rhythm of someone who understands that the best things cannot be rushed. Each pomegranate is examined, weighed in his hand, and either deemed ready or left for another day's sun to perfect. The basket grows heavier with each addition, the fruits settling against each other with soft thuds. A butterfly lands briefly on one of the unpicked pomegranates, its orange and black wings creating a moment of perfect beauty against the red fruit. Hassan pauses his work to watch as the butterfly opens and closes its wings slowly, as if blessing the harvest before fluttering away toward the flowering herbs that grow along the garden's edge. The late afternoon light begins to take on that special quality that only comes in autumn, when the sun sits lower in the sky and everything it touches seems to glow from within. Hassan's basket is nearly full now, heavy with the promise of seeds that will become pomegranate juice for the evening meal, and with arils that will be saved and dried for the lean months ahead. As he picks the last few fruits from the lower branches, Hassan thinks about the cycle that brings him here year after year. These same trees were tended by his father, and his father's father before that. The seeds from this harvest will be planted to grow new trees that his own children will tend when they are grown. There is something deeply peaceful in this continuity, this connection between past and future that flows as steadily as the Nile itself. The basket full, Hassan makes his way back through the garden as the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon. His fingers are stained deep red now, marked by the juice of the pomegranates like a badge of honor from a day well spent. The sweet tart scent follows him as he walks, a reminder of autumn's abundance and the ancient rhythms that govern this timeless place where patience and care yield their ruby rewards. The first rays of dawn paint the garden walls in shades of honey and amber as Layla arrives, her soft leather sandals whispering against the stone pathway. She carries a woven basket lined with silk cloth, and glass vials catch the early light like captured stars. The perfumer has come at the perfect hour, when the night's coolness still holds the roses in its gentle embrace, and their fragrance flows like invisible rivers through the morning air. Hassan emerges from beneath an archway draped in jasmine, his weathered hands already holding a pair of silver scissors that gleam in the growing light. His eyes, kind and knowing, study the roses with the patience of someone who has spent decades learning their secrets. The oils are strongest now, he says, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might disturb the delicate chemistry happening within each petal. They move together through the garden like a slow dance, Layla's trained nose detecting subtle differences that most would never notice. She pauses beside a bush heavy with deep crimson blooms, their petals soft as velvet beneath her fingertips. "These Damascus roses," she murmurs, closing her eyes and breathing deeply. "They hold the memory of yesterday's sunshine and last night's stars." Hassan nods, understanding flowing between them without need for words. He carefully clips the stems, selecting only those flowers that have opened during the night, their essential oils concentrated and pure. The roses fall gently into Layla's basket, each one a small treasure that will become part of something greater. As they work, Hassan shares the garden's rhythms with quiet reverence. In summer, we harvest before the sun climbs high. The heat draws the oils upward, making them volatile, ephemeral. But in these cooler months, the roses hold their secrets longer, releasing them slowly like secrets shared between old friends. Layla listens while her hands move with practiced grace, sorting petals by color and intensity. Some roses whisper of honey and warm earth, while others sing with notes of green leaves and morning dew. She places each variety in separate silk-lined compartments, treating them with the respect due to living poetry. They pause beside a fountain, where water trickles over smooth stones, its gentle sound creating a natural rhythm for their work. Hassan demonstrates how to test a rose's readiness, pressing a single petal between his fingers and inhaling the released fragrance. The oils tell us stories, he explains. This one speaks of the rain 3 days ago, and this one remembers the butterfly that visited yesterday evening. Layla smiles, recognizing a kindred spirit in this keeper of gardens. She shows him her collection of small crystal bottles, each one designed to capture and preserve specific aspects of fragrance. The roses will live forever in these, she says, holding a vial up to catch the strengthening sunlight, their beauty transformed but never lost. Together, they begin the ancient alchemy of distillation. Water heated over a small brazier fills a copper vessel, and rose petals float on its surface like fallen pieces of sunset. Steam rises slowly, carrying with it the very essence of the garden's soul. Drop by precious drop, the rose water collects in glass vessels, clear as crystal, but holding within it the concentrated magic of 1,000 blooms. The air fills with fragrance so pure and concentrated that it seems to slow time itself. Birds pause in their morning songs, as if recognizing something sacred in the perfumer's art. Even the fountain's water seems to flow more gently, adding its own music to the symphony of creation. As the morning progresses, Layla and Hassan work side by side, their movements synchronized by years of practice and deep respect for their craft. The sun climbs higher, painting the garden walls in gold, but the essential work continues at its own unhurried pace. Each drop of rose oil represents hours of patience, generations of knowledge, and the perfect marriage of nature's gifts with human understanding. The finished fragrances rest in their crystal homes, each one a liquid memory of this hidden garden. Some will travel to distant markets, carrying with them the peace of this ancient place. Others will remain, used in ceremonies and celebrations, connecting the present moment with countless generations who have found solace in the rose's timeless beauty. As the morning light grows stronger and their work draws to its natural conclusion, both perfumer and gardener stand quietly among the roses, breathing in the lingering fragrance of their shared creation. They have captured something eternal in their bottles, not just scent, but the very essence of tranquility, the soul of a garden where time moves like honey and every breath carries the promise of peace. The morning arrives with whispers carried on the desert wind. Hassan steps into his garden sanctuary just as the first light touches the ancient walls of Cairo, and immediately he senses something different in the air. The wind has been busy during the night, bearing gifts from distant places across the vast expanse of sand and stone. A fine layer of golden dust settles on everything like a gentle blessing. The leaves of his beloved plants shimmer with this desert kiss, each frond and petal touched by the wandering breeze that has traveled hundreds of miles to reach this hidden oasis. Hassan breathes deeply, tasting the clean, dry sweetness of air that has danced across empty dunes and forgotten valleys. As he walks the familiar paths between his carefully tended beds, something catches his eye. Tiny specks of green dot the spaces between his established plants, seedlings that weren't there yesterday. Small emergent lives pushing through the earth with determined tenderness. The desert wind has been a messenger, carrying seeds from oases far beyond the horizon, depositing them like precious coins throughout his garden. Hassan kneels beside a cluster of these unexpected visitors, his weathered hands hovering protectively over the delicate shoots. Each one tells a story of its own journey, perhaps carried from a palm grove beside a distant well, or lifted from the banks of a seasonal stream that flows only when the rains are generous. The wind knows no boundaries, collecting these small treasures and scattering them with the wisdom of centuries. He examines each seedling with the reverence of a scholar reading ancient texts. This one, with its distinctive silvery leaves, might be a type of sage unknown to his collection. Another, barely visible above the soil, shows the promise of a flowering plant that could bring new colors to his garden palette. The desert has been generous in its gifts, offering him mysteries to nurture and discoveries to unfold. The wind continues its gentle work around him, rustling through the established plants with a sound like distant conversations. Hassan imagines it carrying news between gardens scattered across the desert, connecting his small sanctuary with others like it, creating an invisible network of growing things that spans the endless landscape. He is not alone in his cultivation. He is part of something larger, connected by the very air that brings him these surprises. Moving deeper into the garden, Hassan finds more evidence of the wind's nocturnal generosity. Seeds have collected in the corners where walls meet earth. In the sheltered spaces where his fountain's spray creates perfect conditions for germination. Each discovery fills him with quiet excitement, the anticipation of watching these volunteers reveal their true nature as they grow. Some of the seedlings he recognizes, familiar friends from other parts of his garden that have spread their influence through the wind's assistance. Others remain mysteries, their origins as distant and unknowable as the stars that watched over their journey. Hassan makes mental notes of where each cluster grows, planning his care around these unexpected additions to his sanctuary. The morning sun climbs higher, warming the dust-kissed leaves and encouraging the new seedlings to stretch toward the light. Hassan fetches his watering can, moving with the unhurried grace of someone who understands that gardens grow in their own time. He waters each cluster of volunteers with the same attention he gives his prized specimens, offering them welcome to their new home. As he tends to these wind-borne gifts, Hassan reflects on the patience required to garden in the desert. Not everything will survive. Some seeds will find the conditions too different from their homeland. Some will struggle with the new soil and climate, but others will thrive, adapting and growing into treasures he never could have planned or purchased. The wind shifts direction, carrying new scents across the garden, hints of distant blooms, the green smell of growing things, the clean emptiness of spaces where only sky and sand exist. Hassan closes his eyes and lets these fragrances wash over him, connecting him momentarily with places he has never seen, but now shares through these botanical messengers. By the time the sun reaches its full strength, Hassan has cataloged his new residents and made plans for their care. He will watch them grow, learn their needs, and discover which ones will become permanent members of his garden family. The desert wind has brought him not just seeds, but possibilities. Futures that will unfold leaf by leaf, bloom by bloom, in the seasons to come. The garden settles into the rhythm of another day, its newest inhabitants taking their first tentative steps toward growth under Hassan's gentle guardianship and the benevolent watch of the ancient Cairo sun. In the furthest corner of Hassan's garden, where the limestone walls cast their longest shadows and the bustle of Cairo's streets becomes nothing more than a distant whisper, there lies a grove unlike any other. Here, beneath the careful tending of weathered hands, 7 frankincense trees stand in quiet majesty, their silver-green leaves catching the filtered sunlight like scattered coins upon still water. You approach this sacred space slowly, your sandaled feet making the softest of sounds against the smooth stone pathway. The air here feels different, thicker somehow, perfumed with an ancient fragrance that seems to carry the prayers of 1,000 generations. The frankincense trees, brought as saplings from the distant shores of Arabia, have grown tall under Hassan's patient care, their branches reaching toward the azure sky in silent supplication. As you step into the grove, the temperature drops several degrees, cooled by the shade of interwoven branches above. The ground beneath your feet is carpeted with fallen leaves that crackle softly, releasing their aromatic oils with each gentle step. Along the outer edge of the grove, Hassan has placed simple wooden benches, Worn smooth by countless visitors who have come here seeking solitude and reflection. You settle onto one of these benches, feeling the warm wood against your back as you lean into its comforting embrace. The silence here is profound, not the empty quiet of abandonment, but the full, rich silence of deep contemplation. It wraps around you like a soft cloak, drawing your attention inward, away from the concerns and complications of daily life. Above you, the frankincense trees sway gently in the afternoon breeze, their branches creating a natural cathedral of living architecture. Tiny droplets of golden resin cling to the bark here and there, catching the light and glowing like amber jewels. The fragrance that emanates from these precious tears is subtle yet pervasive, filling your nostrils with its clean, woody sweetness that seems to clear both mind and spirit. As you breathe deeply, the incense works its ancient magic. Each inhalation draws the sacred smoke deeper into your being, while each exhalation carries away tension and worry like leaves scattered by the wind. Your shoulders begin to relax, dropping away from your ears as the knots of stress dissolve in the perfumed air. Around you, other visitors have found their own quiet corners of the grove. An elderly merchant sits cross-legged upon a prayer rug, his eyes closed in deep meditation, his breathing so slow and steady it barely stirs the air around him. Near the eastern wall, a young scribe has set down her papyrus and reed pen, choosing instead to simply exist in this moment of perfect stillness, her hands folded peacefully in her lap. The light filtering through the canopy above creates ever-shifting patterns on the ground at your feet, moving shadows that dance and play like living calligraphy, writing temporary poems in the ancient language of light and shade. You watch these patterns with growing fascination, allowing your mind to follow their lazy movements rather than the racing thoughts that usually command your attention. Time seems to slow in this sacred grove, each moment stretching like honey poured from a clay jar. Minutes feel like hours, yet hours pass like minutes, creating a temporal space outside the normal rhythms of city life. The sun's position shifts gradually overhead, but the quality of peace remains constant, as if this grove exists in its own dimension of serenity. A small bird alights on a branch directly above you, its tiny feet making no sound on the bark. It regards you with bright, curious eyes before settling into perfect stillness, becoming part of the grove's meditation just as you have. Even the creatures here understand the sanctity of this space, the importance of honoring the profound quiet that Hassan has cultivated with such care. The frankincense continues its work, the aromatic smoke curling upward in lazy spirals that seem to carry your thoughts and prayers toward the heavens. Ancient wisdom whispers that this sacred resin has the power to bridge the gap between earthly concerns and divine understanding, creating a pathway for the soul to travel beyond the boundaries of flesh and time. As the afternoon deepens toward evening, you feel no urgency to leave this peaceful sanctuary. The grove holds you gently, like a mother's embrace, allowing you to simply exist in this moment of perfect tranquility. Here, surrounded by the sacred frankincense and wrapped in silence thick as velvet, you discover what the ancient mystics have always known: that sometimes the greatest journey is the one that leads inward, into the infinite landscape of a quiet heart. The desert rose garden has many treasures, but perhaps none so precious as this: a space where time stands still and the soul remembers its truest nature. The morning sun casts gentle shadows across the rows of carefully tended plants as Hassan makes his way through the healing garden, his weathered hands carrying a woven basket that has served this purpose for countless seasons. The air here holds a different quality than the rest of the oasis, thick with the concentrated essence of dozens of medicinal herbs, each one planted with intention and nurtured with the wisdom passed down through generations. Hassan pauses beside a cluster of aloe plants, their thick, succulent leaves gleaming with morning dew. He runs his fingers along the smooth surface of one particularly robust specimen, feeling for the telltale firmness that indicates the gel within has reached perfect potency. These plants, he knows, hold within their simple green forms the power to soothe burns from the desert sun, to heal cuts that refuse to close, to bring relief to skin weathered by sand and wind. With practiced care, he selects 3 mature leaves, cutting them cleanly at their base with a small, curved blade that belonged to his grandfather. The mint grows in neat rows nearby, its leaves releasing their cooling fragrance with each gentle breeze. Hassan breathes in deeply, allowing the clean, sharp scent to fill his lungs completely. He has watched visitors to the garden, travelers who arrive with stomachs troubled by unfamiliar foods or the stress of long journeys, find immediate comfort simply from breathing in this aromatic air. The mint here grows stronger than anywhere else, its roots drawing from the pure water that feeds the underground springs. Hassan selects the youngest, most tender shoots, knowing that their flavor will be both gentle and effective when prepared as a soothing tea. In the corner where the morning shade lingers longest, the chamomile spreads in soft, carpet-like patches. Its tiny white and yellow flowers bob gently in the warm breeze, resembling miniature suns scattered across a field of green. Hassan kneels among these delicate blooms, his movements slow and reverent. Each flower he gathers represents hours of peaceful sleep for someone in the city beyond the garden walls. Perhaps a mother whose infant has been restless, or an elderly merchant whose joints ache too much for comfortable rest. The chamomile flowers come away easily in his hands, their sweet, apple-like fragrance rising around him like incense. As Hassan works his way through the garden, he hears the familiar sound of sandaled feet on the stone pathway. Without looking up, he knows that Hakim Yusuf is approaching for his weekly visit. The learned healer has been coming to this garden for nearly 2 decades, drawn not only by the quality of the herbs, but by the peaceful energy that seems to emanate from this carefully maintained space. Hassan has observed how the Hakim's shoulders relax as soon as he enters the garden, how his breathing deepens and his step becomes more measured. "Good morning, my friend," Hakim Yusuf calls softly, his voice carrying the warmth of long familiarity. "The roses in the main garden are particularly beautiful today, but I confess I am drawn as always to your sanctuary of healing." Hassan straightens slowly, his back appreciating the gentle stretch, and turns to greet his old friend with a peaceful smile. The 2 men have developed a rhythm over the years, Hassan continuing his methodical harvest, while the Hakim examines the plants, sometimes asking questions about their growth, sometimes simply walking among them in contemplative silence. Today, Hakim Yusuf is particularly interested in the lavender that grows along the southern wall, where it receives the full benefit of the morning sun, while being protected from the harshest afternoon heat. The purple spikes release their drowsy fragrance as he brushes past them, and Hassan watches as the healer closes his eyes briefly, allowing the scent to work its subtle magic. This lavender, Hassan knows, will find its way into sachets placed beneath pillows, into oils that soothe tired muscles, into teas that quiet racing thoughts. The 2 men work together in comfortable silence, Hassan's basket filling slowly with nature's remedies, while Hakim Yusuf makes mental notes of which plants are reaching peak potency. A small gecko darts between the herb rows, its presence a sign of the garden's healthy ecosystem. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of water trickling through irrigation channels provides a gentle, constant rhythm that seems to slow time itself. As the sun climbs higher and the day grows warmer, Hassan completes his morning harvest. His basket now holds the concentrated healing power of the earth, simple plants that have been quietly growing, absorbing sunlight and pure water, transforming these basic elements into medicine for both body and spirit. In this peaceful corner of ancient Cairo, where the desert meets the garden, the timeless partnership between human wisdom and nature's generosity continues its gentle, healing work. The sun hangs low over Cairo's ancient stones, casting long, golden shadows that stretch across the hidden garden like fingers reaching toward tomorrow. In the very heart of this secret sanctuary, where jasmine vines dance with the evening breeze and fountain water sings its eternal song, stands a tree that has witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties, the birth and death of dreams, the quiet persistence of beauty in a world that never stops changing. This is the ancient olive tree, its trunk twisted and gnarled like the hands of an old storyteller, each groove and ridge carved by countless seasons of sun and rain, wind and stillness. The bark is silver gray in the fading light, worn smooth in places where countless hands have touched it in reverence, rough in others where time has left its patient mark. Its branches spread wide and welcoming, creating a natural pavilion of green leaves that shimmer with the last rays of daylight. Hassan approaches the tree as he does every evening, his footsteps soft on the worn stone path that winds between beds of sleeping roses. The day's work in the garden is complete. The mint has been watered, the fig trees pruned, the herbs gathered for tomorrow's morning tea. Now comes his favorite time, these precious moments when the garden settles into its evening rhythm, and the olive tree shares its ancient wisdom with anyone patient enough to listen. He settles himself against the broad trunk, feeling the solid strength of wood that has stood here longer than memory. The bark is warm against his back, still holding the day's heat like a gentle embrace. Above him, the leaves rustle with the softest whisper, a sound that speaks of patience and endurance, of roots that run deep into Cairo's ancient earth and branches that have sheltered generations of gardeners just like him. In this sacred shade, Hassan closes his eyes and lets himself become part of the tree's long story. He thinks of the gardeners who came before him, men and women whose names have been forgotten but whose love for this place lives on in every carefully tended plant, every stone placed with intention, every seed that was planted in hope. They too sat beneath these branches when the weight of the world felt heavy, when the simple act of tending growing things was both prayer and meditation. The olive tree has seen it all. It remembers when this garden was first carved from the desert's edge, when the first fountain was built and the first roses were planted. It has watched children grow into elders, has provided shelter for countless quiet conversations, has stood witness to the small daily miracles that make life beautiful. The first bloom of spring, the sweet weight of ripening fruit, the gentle hands that have tended its roots with water and care. As the evening deepens and the first stars begin to appear in the darkening sky above, Hassan feels the tree's presence like a gentle teacher, sharing its most precious lessons. Patience, it whispers through rustling leaves. Growth comes slowly, one season at a time. Beauty is not about perfection, but about endurance, about standing strong through storms and drought, about offering shelter to others even when your own branches are heavy with age. The fountain's gentle music mingles with the sound of leaves dancing in the evening breeze, creating a symphony of peace that has echoed through this garden for centuries. Somewhere in the distance, the call to evening prayer drifts across the rooftops of Cairo, but here in this hidden sanctuary, every moment feels like prayer, the quiet communion between human hearts and the patient wisdom of growing things. Hassan opens his eyes and looks up through the olive's ancient canopy, where the last light of day filters through leaves like scattered gold coins. He thinks of tomorrow's work in the garden, of the seeds that wait to be planted, and the young plants that need his care. But for now, in this perfect moment of stillness, he is exactly where he belongs, sheltered by wisdom older than the pyramids, connected to a chain of gardeners that stretches back through time and forward into a future filled with the same quiet hope that has always made gardens bloom in the desert. The olive tree stands silent and eternal, its ancient branches reaching towards stars that have watched over Cairo since the beginning of time. Its roots drinking deep from the same earth that has nourished this hidden garden through centuries of change and wonder. The silver disk of the full moon hangs suspended above Cairo's ancient walls like a luminous pearl against black silk. In Hassan's hidden garden, shadows stretch long and soft, transforming familiar pathways into mysterious corridors of blue-gray light. The air carries the desert's coolness now, a gentle reprieve from the day's heat that seems to breathe life back into every leaf and stem. Hassan moves through his sanctuary with the quiet reverence of a temple keeper. His bare feet whisper against the worn stone paths, each step deliberate and unhurried. In his weathered hands, he carries a large clay vessel, its surface still cool from resting in the deepest part of the well. The water within catches fragments of moonlight, creating tiny stars that dance with each gentle movement. The night garden reveals secrets hidden during daylight hours. Jasmine releases its most intoxicating fragrance into the cool air, each bloom unfurling like a small white prayer. The date palms rustle overhead with sounds like distant ocean waves, their fronds catching silver light and casting intricate shadows that shift and dance across the ground below. Even the ancient fountain seems to sing more softly now, its waters creating a gentle percussion that harmonizes with the night's quiet symphony. Hassan approaches a cluster of roses near the garden's heart. These particular blooms, deep red as garnets in daylight, appear almost black in the moonlight, their velvet petals dusted with silver. He tilts his vessel, allowing water to flow in a steady, gentle stream around their roots. The earth drinks gratefully, releasing the rich scent of moistened soil that mingles with rose perfume and night-blooming jasmine. As water meets parched ground, tiny droplets catch and hold the moonbeams. Each plant becomes adorned with what appears to be scattered diamonds, water droplets, transformed into jewels by the moon's alchemy. Hassan pauses to watch this nightly magic, his eyes soft with wonder that never diminishes, despite having witnessed this transformation countless times before. The pomegranate trees stand like ancient guardians along the garden's eastern wall, their leaves rustling with whispered secrets. Hassan moves among them, his vessel singing a quiet song as water streams from its lip. The trees seem to sigh with contentment as their roots receive this nighttime blessing. Above, their branches catch moonlight in a delicate web of silver and shadow. A gentle breeze stirs through the garden, carrying with it the distant sounds of the sleeping city. Somewhere a night bird calls softly, its voice blending with the fountain's murmur and the subtle sound of water nurturing thirsty earth. Hassan refills his vessel at the well, the rope and pulley system moving with the smooth silence of long practice. The herb garden beckons next, where mint and basil release intensified fragrances into the cool air. Hassan waters each plant with careful attention, knowing that these night drinks will strengthen their oils and deepen their healing properties. The lavender seems to glow with its own inner light, each spike of purple flowers appearing frosted with silver dust. As Hassan continues his ritual, the garden transforms around him into something from an ancient tale. Shadows pool like dark water in corners and beneath overhanging branches, while moonbeams create pathways of light that seem to invite wandering. The contrast paints everything in shades of mystery and peace, turning the familiar space into a realm that exists somewhere between dream and waking. The orange and lemon trees, heavy with fruit, cast intricate patterns on the ground below. Hassan tends to each with the same careful attention, allowing water to soak deeply into soil that will feed the trees through tomorrow's heat. The citrus blossoms release their sweet perfume more freely now, as if the cooler air has given them permission to share their most precious gifts. Near the garden center, the largest date palm spreads its fronds like protective arms over the space below. Hassan stands beneath its canopy, vessel empty now, and breathes deeply of air perfumed with 100 different fragrances. Water droplets continue to catch moonlight throughout the garden, creating a constellation that mirrors the stars above. The ritual complete, Hassan sets his vessel beside the well and allows himself these quiet moments of appreciation. The garden pulses gently around him with contentment, every plant satisfied and peaceful. Night-blooming flowers begin to open their faces to the moon, and somewhere in the jasmine, a nightingale begins its liquid song. This is the hour when the garden dreams, when roots drink deeply, and leaves release the day's stored warmth into the cooling air. Hassan becomes part of this nightly symphony, a guardian tending his secret paradise beneath Cairo's ancient moon, ensuring that tomorrow will bring another day of beauty and abundance to this hidden oasis of peace. The morning sun filters through the date palms at the edge of Hassan's sanctuary, casting dappled shadows across a corner of the garden that seems to shimmer with its own light. Here, in this special alcove he has carefully tended for 3 seasons, the air itself appears to dance. This is the butterfly garden, where Hassan's patient hands have coaxed blooms that call to the winged jewels of the desert. You follow the worn stone path as it curves between raised beds filled with lantana clusters, their tiny flowers forming perfect spheres of orange, yellow, and deep crimson. The blooms release their sweet, almost honey-like fragrance into the warm air, and already you can see the first visitors of the day. A pair of painted lady butterflies drift from flower to flower, their orange and black wings catching the early light like stained glass windows come alive. Hassan moves slowly through his creation, his weathered hands gentle as he tends to a patch of white sweet alyssum that carpets the ground like fresh snow. The tiny flowers release their subtle perfume with each brush of his fingers, and he smiles as a small copper butterfly alights nearby, its wings burnished like the metal vessels in the nearby bazaar. The creature seems unafraid, resting for a long moment as Hassan continues his quiet work. The garden unfolds in carefully planned succession. Here, the pentas flowers stand tall on sturdy stems, their star-shaped blooms creating perfect landing platforms in shades of pink, white, and deep purple. A swallowtail butterfly, magnificent with its yellow and black stripes, settles on a cluster of pink pentas, its long tongue unfurling to reach the nectar hidden within. The sight is mesmerizing, this ancient dance between flower and butterfly that has played out for countless generations. You settle onto the carved stone bench Hassan has placed at the garden's heart, surrounded by this living tapestry. The morning breeze carries the mingled fragrances of all the blooms, the spicy sweetness of lantana, the honey notes of alyssum, the subtle perfume of pentas. It's a symphony of scents that seems to call more butterflies from their hidden places among the palms and pomegranate trees. As the sun climbs higher, warming the air, the garden truly comes alive. Blue pansies butterfly emerge from somewhere in the shadowy depths of the larger garden, their delicate wings the color of desert sky at dawn. They join the growing congregation, weaving between the flowers in patterns that seem both random and perfectly choreographed. Each butterfly follows its own invisible path, yet together they create a display of such beauty that you find yourself holding your breath. Hassan approaches with a small clay pot, planting new seedlings of verbena along the border. He works with the slow, meditative rhythm you've come to associate with this place, never hurrying, always present in each moment. A white butterfly with black spots settles on his shoulder as he works, and he continues without disturbing it, as if wearing living jewelry were the most natural thing in the world. The afternoon brings different visitors. As the shadows lengthen and the light turns golden, sphinx moths appear, their wings beating so rapidly they seem to hover like tiny hummingbirds above the evening blooming flowers. Hassan has planned for this 2 night-blooming jasmine and moonflowers that will unfurl their petals as darkness falls, ensuring his garden provides sustenance around the clock. You watch a particularly bold butterfly, its wings deep orange with black veining, as it settles on your outstretched hand. Its touch is lighter than silk, barely perceptible, and you marvel at the trust this tiny creature shows. Its proboscis extends briefly, perhaps tasting the salt on your skin, before it flutters away to rejoin its companions among the flowers. The late afternoon light transforms the garden into something magical. Every wing becomes translucent, glowing like colored glass, and the flowers seem to pulse with their own inner light. The sweet alyssum releases its strongest fragrance now, creating clouds of perfume that drift across the space. Butterflies move through these scented veils like dancers in an ancient ritual, their movements graceful and unhurried. As evening approaches and the first stars appear in the deepening sky, Hassan lights a small lantern at the garden's center. The gentle glow attracts the last butterflies of the day, and they circle the light briefly before settling into hidden places among the leaves to rest. The garden grows quiet, but not empty. You can feel the presence of all these small lives tucked safely among the flowers, waiting for tomorrow's sun to call them forth again. In this moment, surrounded by the lingering fragrances and the soft whisper of wings settling into sleep, you understand the deeper magic Hassan has created here. This is more than a garden, it's a sanctuary where the smallest wonders of creation can flourish. A testament to the patient love that calls beauty into being, one careful seed at a time. The morning light filters through the latticed windows of the garden pavilion, casting intricate shadows that dance across the stone floor like living calligraphy. Ibrahim sits cross-legged on a woven mat, his reed pens arranged in careful rows beside pots of deep blue and burnished gold ink. Before him lies a sheet of pristine papyrus, waiting to receive the wisdom he has gathered in these hidden gardens of ancient Cairo. Hassan approaches quietly, his weathered hands cradling a collection of natural treasures: spiral shells from distant shores, dried seed pods that rattle softly in the breeze, and a perfect desert rose, its crystalline petals catching the light like frozen honey. He settles beside the young scribe, placing each object with the reverence of one who understands their deeper significance. "Tell me, Ibrahim," Hassan's voice flows like water over smooth stones, "what do you see when you look upon these gifts from the earth?" The scribe lifts the desert rose, turning it slowly in his palm. Its five-fold symmetry reveals itself in layers, each petal a perfect echo of the others, yet unique in its subtle variations. The crystalline structure seems to hold within it all the patience of the desert, all the slow artistry of wind and sand and time. "I see, mathematics made manifest," Ibrahim whispers, his eyes widening with wonder. Each fold, each curve follows a pattern older than our oldest texts. Hassan nods, his smile deepening the lines around his eyes like rivers carved by countless seasons. He reaches for a nautilus shell, its spiral chambers gleaming pearl white in the morning sun. The same pattern that guides this shell's growth can be found in the unfurling of a fern frond, in the arrangement of seeds within a sunflower's heart. Ibrahim dips his finest brush into the blue ink, but instead of forming letters, he traces the shell's spiral onto the papyrus. The curve flows from his hand as naturally as breath, each revolution slightly larger than the last, following the ancient rhythm that nature has perfected across millennia. "The golden ratio," Hassan murmurs, watching the elegant spiral take shape, "the divine proportion that brings harmony to all things. Your illuminated manuscripts, the way you border your texts with flowering vines, the arrangement of your letters on the page, you have been following this sacred geometry without knowing its name." Around them, the garden itself demonstrates these principles. The palm fronds overhead divide their space, according to the same mathematical poetry, their angles creating a natural arcade that filters light into the gentlest of blessings. Below, the arrangement of stones around the fountain follows patterns that please the eye without the viewer understanding why. Circles within squares, squares within circles, all proportioned according to nature's hidden blueprint. Ibrahim sets down his brush and walks to where Jasmine climbs the garden wall. Each flower displays its petals in perfect symmetry, yet no two blooms are identical. He traces the star pattern of a single blossom with his fingertip, feeling the slight texture of the petals, breathing in their evening fragrance that lingers even in the morning air. "Every manuscript I have ever created," he says softly, "every border I have painted, every letter I have shaped, I have been trying to capture something I felt but could not name. The rightness of these patterns, the peace they bring to the eye and heart." Hassan joins him beside the jasmine wall, his hands gentle as he touches a particularly perfect bloom. "Art and nature are not separate streams, my young friend. They spring from the same source. When you create beauty with your inks and brushes, you participate in the same creative force that shapes the petals of this flower, that guides the spiral of the shell, that forms the crystals of the desert rose." The two men return to the pavilion, where Ibrahim's papyrus awaits. But now, instead of copying ancient texts, he begins to create something new, an illuminated page that weaves together the patterns he has discovered. Arabic calligraphy flows in spirals that echo the nautilus shell, bordered by geometric flowers that mirror the desert rose's crystalline symmetry. Each letter becomes a small work of art, connected to its neighbors by the golden thread of proportion that runs through all creation. As the sun climbs higher, warming the stones and releasing the fragrance of herbs and flowers, Ibrahim works with a new understanding. His brush moves with the confidence of one who has glimpsed the underlying order of the universe, the hidden connections that bind together the smallest flower and the grandest human aspiration. The garden holds them in its embrace, a living manuscript where every leaf is a letter, every bloom a word in the endless poem of existence. In this place where art and nature reveal their kinship, inspiration flows as naturally as the fountain's gentle song, as eternal as the patterns that guide both the growth of flowers and the dreams of those who seek to capture beauty in their work. The first whisper of autumn arrives on a gentle breeze that carries the scent of cooling earth and the promise of rain. Hassan feels it in his bones as he kneels beside the raised garden bed, his weathered hands sifting through soil that has been lovingly prepared over countless seasons. The morning air holds a different quality, now softer, more forgiving than the harsh embrace of summer that has finally begun to release its grip on the hidden garden. He pauses, closing his eyes, and listens to the subtle symphony of change that surrounds him. The fountain's eternal song seems more melodic in this cooler air, its water catching the slanted light of an autumn sun that no longer burns, but instead caresses everything it touches. Palm fronds rustle overhead with a gentler voice, and somewhere in the distance, a dove calls to its mate with a sound like contentment itself. The soil beneath his fingers tells stories of patience and preparation. For weeks, Hassan has been enriching these beds with compost born from the garden's own abundance. Fallen leaves from seasons past, fruit peels from the kitchen, grass clippings from the pathways, all of it transformed through time and care into something rich and dark and full of promise. He lifts a handful of this precious earth, feeling its weight, inhaling its deep, earthy fragrance that speaks of life waiting to unfold. Today marks the beginning of autumn's planting, that sacred ritual of faith that gardeners have performed since humans first learned to coax beauty from seed. Hassan reaches for the small cloth pouch that contains the calendula seeds, tiny, curved crescents that seem impossibly small to hold such vibrant potential. Each one carries within it the memory of golden orange blooms that will dance in the winter sunshine, their faces turning toward whatever light the season offers. With movements both deliberate and reverent, he creates small depressions in the prepared soil, spacing them with the precision that comes from years of practice. The distance between each seed is measured not with rulers, but with intuition, the kind of knowledge that lives in the hands and heart rather than in books. Into each tiny hollow, he places a single seed, covering it with a whisper of soil, a gentle blessing of earth that will cradle it through the weeks of germination ahead. The sweet pea seeds come next, plumper and rounder, feeling solid and confident in his palm. These climbing beauties will need support as they grow, and Hassan has already prepared delicate trellises woven from reed and bamboo. He can already imagine their tendrils reaching upward, their pastel flowers releasing their honey-sweet fragrance into the garden's morning air. The sweet peas understand the cooler seasons, thriving in temperatures that would challenge their summer cousins. As he plants each variety, Hassan finds himself moving with the unhurried rhythm that the garden has taught him over the decades. There is no rushing this ancient dance between human hands and sleeping seeds. Each one deserves its moment of attention, its proper welcome into the soil that will become its world. The poppy seeds are almost impossibly small, like grains of black sand. Yet Hassan handles them with the same care he would show the most precious jewel. The afternoon light shifts and changes as he works, painting the garden walls in shades of amber and rose. Shadows grow longer, cooler, offering respite that has been rare during the blazing months just past. A butterfly, perhaps one of the last of the season, drifts by on wings that seem to catch and hold the golden light. It pauses at the jasmine that still blooms along the far wall, a living reminder that beauty persists through every transition. Hassan's movements become meditation, each gesture connecting him to gardeners across centuries who have performed this same hopeful ritual. He thinks of the Persian gardens that inspired this hidden sanctuary, of the careful hands that planted the first roses in Damascus, of the patient souls who coaxed life from desert sand across generations uncounted. In this moment, he becomes part of an unbroken chain of those who believe in tomorrow's flowers. The fountain continues its gentle music, a constant heartbeat that measures not time but continuity. Water flows as it has for centuries, nourishing roots both seen and unseen, carrying minerals and life throughout this small paradise. The sound becomes a lullaby for the newly planted seeds, a promise that they will never lack for the tender care they need to fulfill their destiny. As the day draws toward its peaceful close, Hassan waters each bed with the gentleness of rain. The droplets catch the last rays of sunlight, creating tiny prisms that scatter brief rainbows across the moistened earth. Somewhere beneath the surface, the first stirring of life has already begun, invisible but certain, patient but determined. In this quiet garden corner of ancient Cairo, autumn's promise takes root in soil enriched by time, tended by wisdom, and blessed by the eternal hope that tomorrow will bring new blooms to grace this hidden world. The late afternoon sun filters through the delicate branches of the almond trees, casting dancing shadows across the garden's ancient pathways. Hassan pauses in his work, his weathered hands still holding the pruning shears, as a figure emerges from the arched entrance like a vision from a dream. The man moves with the fluid grace of water, his simple white robe flowing behind him as he steps onto the mosaic tiles that have witnessed centuries of quiet contemplation. This is a Sufi, a seeker of the divine, and Hassan recognizes the serene expression that marks those who have dedicated their lives to finding God through movement and breath. The holy man's eyes are closed, yet he navigates the garden paths with the certainty of one who sees with his heart rather than his sight. His bare feet make no sound against the cool stones, and the very air seems to still in anticipation of what is to come. The Sufi moves to the center of the garden, where the fountain sends its gentle spray into the warm air, creating tiny rainbows in the golden light. Around him, the almond trees release their pale pink petals in the evening breeze, each blossom floating downward like a prayer made manifest. Hassan sets down his tools and watches from beneath the pomegranate tree, understanding instinctively that he is about to witness something sacred. With arms extended toward the heavens, the mystic begins to turn, slowly at first, like the careful rotation of the earth itself, his white robes spreading around him in perfect circles. His right hand faces upward to receive divine grace, while his left hand turns downward to share that blessing with the world below. The movement is ancient, practiced through countless years of devotion, each revolution a step closer to the infinite. The falling almond petals seem to respond to his presence, swirling around him in spirals of pink and white. They dance with him, caught in the gentle whirlwind of his spinning form, creating a living mandala of flesh and flower, earth and spirit. Hassan watches in wonder as the boundary between dancer and garden begins to dissolve, the Sufi becoming one with the eternal rhythm that governs all growing things. The mystic's breathing deepens, becomes a song without words, a melody that harmonizes with the splash of the fountain and the whisper of leaves. His face, illuminated by shafts of golden sunlight, reflects a peace so profound that Hassan feels his own heart slow to match this sacred cadence. Time seems to stretch and bend around the spinning figure, minutes becoming hours, hours becoming moments, all measurement lost in the eternal now of divine communion. Around them, the garden holds its breath. The jasmine vines pause in their climbing, their white stars of fragrance releasing their perfume in waves that blend with the rose oil the Sufi wears. The date palms sway in perfect time with his movements, their fronds creating a natural cathedral above this impromptu altar of devotion. Even the goldfish in the fountain pool seem to swim in synchronized circles, their golden forms catching and reflecting the last rays of the setting sun. Hassan understands, with the wisdom that comes from a lifetime of tending growing things, that he is witnessing the same force that causes seeds to sprout and flowers to bloom. The Sufi's dance is not separate from the work of gardening. Both are acts of faith. Both require patience and surrender. Both transform the practitioner through contact with something greater than themselves. In his spinning meditation, the holy man tends the garden of his soul with the same devotion Hassan brings to his earthly paradise. The petals continue to fall, now joined by tiny leaves and the occasional olive from the ancient tree that stands sentinel at the garden's edge. They create a carpet of natural confetti around the turning figure, a celebration of the marriage between human longing and divine presence. The air fills with the mingled scents of almond blossom, jasmine, and the faint smoke of frankincense from some distant temple, all woven together into an invisible tapestry of prayer. As the sun touches the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, the Sufi's dance gradually slows. His spinning becomes gentle swaying, his swaying becomes stillness, and finally he stands motionless in the center of the garden, surrounded by the scattered petals that have blessed his meditation. His eyes remain closed, but a smile of infinite contentment spreads across his weathered features. In the gathering dusk, Hassan feels the profound silence that follows sacred moments, a quiet that contains all the world's music. The Sufi opens his eyes at last, nods once toward the gardener in wordless gratitude, and glides away as silently as he came, leaving only the lingering sense that holiness has walked among the flowers. The garden settles into evening peace, forever changed by the dance of devotion that transformed petals and prayers into a single, perfect offering to the divine. The morning light filters through the narrow window of Hassan's seed library, casting gentle golden rectangles across the cool stone floor. This chamber, carved deep into the foundation of the old house, maintains a perfect temperature year-round, neither too warm nor too cold, creating the ideal sanctuary for his most precious collection. Hassan moves slowly through the room, his weathered hands trailing along the wooden shelves that line every wall from floor to ceiling. Each shelf holds dozens of small clay pots, their surfaces smooth from years of careful handling. The pots are arranged with meticulous precision, grouped by plant family, then by season, then by the year they were collected. Every container bears a small papyrus label written in Hassan's careful script, noting not just the plant's name, but the story of where and when each seed was gathered. He pauses before a section dedicated to flowers that bloom in the hottest months. His fingers find a pot labeled Desert Marigold, Third Courtyard, Summer of the Great Rains. Inside, hundreds of tiny seeds rest in darkness, each one carrying within it the memory of those unusual summer storms that brought such unexpected abundance to the garden. Hassan remembers that season well, how the marigolds seemed to glow like small suns against the wet earth, their golden petals lasting weeks longer than usual thanks to the gentle moisture in the air. Moving deeper into the chamber, Hassan approaches his herb collection. Here are the seeds of mint varieties that have grown in these courtyards for generations, their genetic patterns shaped by years of careful selection. He lifts a pot containing seeds from his favorite spearmint plant, the one that grows beside the fountain in the second courtyard. These seeds carry forward not just the plant's ability to thrive in partial shade, but also its particularly sweet fragrance that intensifies in the evening hours. The vegetable seeds occupy an entire wall of their own. Hassan's fingers trace over pots containing beans that climb the highest trellises, tomatoes that fruit throughout the longest summers, and cucumbers that remain crisp even in the desert heat. Each variety represents years of observation and selection, choosing only the seeds from plants that showed the greatest resilience, the sweetest fruit, the most generous harvest. In the coolest corner of the chamber sits Hassan's collection of rare varieties, seeds from plants that visitors have brought from distant lands, or ancient varieties he has rescued from abandoned gardens. There are pomegranate seeds from trees that grow fruit sweeter than honey, and date palm seeds from groves that have stood since the time of the pharaohs. These seeds represent not just botanical diversity, but living connections to other places and other times. Hassan selects a small pot from the rare collection, one labeled simply Evening Rose, gift from the traveling scholar. Inside are the seeds of climbing roses that bloom only at sunset, their petals releasing their fragrance into the cooling air. The scholar who brought these seeds spoke of gardens beyond the great desert, where such roses covered entire walls of ancient libraries. Now, thanks to these carefully preserved seeds, those distant gardens live on in this quiet corner of Cairo. The process of maintaining this collection requires infinite patience. Each season, Hassan tests small samples from his oldest seed stores, planting them in special beds to ensure their viability. Seeds that fail to germinate are carefully removed, their space given to fresh collections. Those that sprout strong and true earn their place for another year, their pots moved to places of honor among the collection. As Hassan continues his morning inspection, he notices how each pot seems to hold not just seeds, but stories. The basil seeds remember the afternoon when children from the neighborhood helped with the harvest, their laughter echoing through the garden as they learned to recognize the plants by touch and smell. The sunflower seeds carry the memory of the year when the flowers grew so tall they could be seen from the street, drawing curious passers-by to peek through the garden gate. This chamber represents more than agricultural preservation. It is a library of possibilities, each seed a promise of future gardens yet to be planted. Hassan understands that he is not just maintaining genetic material, but stewarding dreams. Every seed holds within it the potential for shade on hot afternoons, for beauty to delight the eyes, for herbs to flavor simple meals, for connections between gardener and earth that span generations. As the morning light shifts and deepens, Hassan closes his inspection with a sense of quiet satisfaction. His seed library stands ready for whatever the future might bring. Seasons of abundance to celebrate, or difficult years, when these carefully preserved varieties might mean the difference between a thriving garden and empty earth. In this cool stone chamber, surrounded by thousands of sleeping possibilities, Hassan tends not just to plants, but to hope itself. The first drops arrive like whispered prayers, so gentle that Hassan almost mistakes them for dewfall. He pauses in the garden courtyard, his weathered hands still holding the clay watering vessel, and tilts his weathered face toward the pewter sky. A single droplet touches his forehead, cool and perfect, followed by another on his cheek. The rare gift of winter rain has come to Cairo. Hassan sets down his vessel with reverence and steps into the center of the courtyard, his bare feet finding the warm stones that have absorbed the day's heat. Above him, clouds gather like soft gray veils, their edges touched with silver where the late afternoon sun tries to pierce through. The air holds that particular stillness that comes just before rain truly begins, when the very atmosphere seems to hold its breath in anticipation. Then it comes, not as a sudden downpour, but as nature's most gentle benediction. Each raindrop catches the fading light as it falls, tiny crystals descending from heaven to bless this hidden sanctuary. Hassan opens his arms wide, palms turned upward, and closes his eyes. The rain kisses his shoulders, his outstretched hands, his upturned face. Each drop carries the coolness of distant mountains, the purity of clouds that have traveled far across the Mediterranean to reach this desert garden. The sound begins as the softest whisper, rain meeting stone, rain touching leaves, rain awakening the earth. The fountain in the garden's heart adds its gentle voice to this symphony, as raindrops create tiny percussion notes on its surface. The pomegranate trees rustle their branches in gratitude, their leaves trembling as moisture finds each surface, each edge, each waiting stem. Hassan breathes deeply, and the air fills his lungs with something more precious than gold, the scent of petrichor. This ancient fragrance, older than empires, older than the pyramids themselves, rises from the earth as rain meets dust. It is the smell of awakening, of renewal, of the desert drinking deeply after months of patient waiting. The very stones beneath his feet seem to exhale this perfume, as if the garden itself sighs with contentment. Water begins to pool in the shallow channels Hassan has carved between his plantings, creating tiny rivers that wind between the herbs and flowers. The mint releases its fragrance as raindrops settle on its leaves, while the jasmine vines seem to shimmer with new life. Each plant receives its portion of this celestial gift, the roses drinking through their roots, the date palms standing tall as rain traces silver paths down their trunks, the climbing vines reaching their tendrils toward the life-giving moisture. The rain falls steadily now, not heavy enough to pound or punish, but with the perfect rhythm of blessing. Hassan watches as his carefully tended plants respond to this natural irrigation, knowing that these drops will sustain them through the long, dry months ahead. The winter rain is more precious than any treasure in the Sultan's coffers, more valuable than silk from distant lands or spices from far shores. He thinks of his grandfather, who taught him that the desert teaches patience above all virtues. Wait for the rain, the old man would say, and when it comes, receive it with your whole heart. Now Hassan understands this wisdom completely, feeling gratitude flow through him like the water flowing through his garden channels. The air grows cooler as the rain continues, washing away the dust from leaves and stones, revealing colors made vivid by moisture. The red clay pots seem to glow, the green of the plants becomes more vibrant, and even the ancient walls seem to come alive with subtle hues that dust had hidden. The garden transforms before his eyes, not into something new, but into its truest, most beautiful self. Hassan remains in the courtyard as twilight approaches, letting the rain soak through his simple robes to his skin. He feels no hurry to seek shelter, for this is a moment of pure grace, a gift that comes perhaps only a few times each year. His plants will remember this water, storing it deep in their roots, carrying it through the seasons ahead like a sacred trust. As the last light fades, and the first stars begin to appear between the parting clouds, Hassan finally steps under the covered walkway, but he does not go inside. Instead, he sits on the stone bench, listening to the gentle symphony of rain in his garden, watching the water continue its blessing work. The sound of droplets falling from leaf to leaf, from branch to earth, creates a lullaby that seems to emanate from the garden's very soul. Tonight, his plants will drink deeply. Tonight, the earth will remember what it means to be abundant, and Hassan will sleep peacefully, knowing that the desert has shared one of its most precious gifts with his hidden sanctuary. The winter morning air carries the faint scent of wood smoke and distant spices as Hassan moves quietly through the dormant orchard. The ancient fig trees stand bare against the pale sky, their gnarled branches reaching upward like weathered hands in prayer. In the soft light of dawn, each tree seems to hold its breath, waiting for the careful touch that will shape its future. Hassan pauses beside the oldest pomegranate tree, its trunk thick and scarred from decades of generous harvests. His weathered fingers trace the bark, feeling for the subtle signs that speak of the tree's inner life. Here, a branch that grew too eagerly toward the center, blocking precious light from reaching its companions. There, a cluster of small shoots that will drain energy from the tree's main purpose, the sweet, ruby-jeweled fruit that will come with summer's warmth. The pruning knife feels familiar in his palm, its weight balanced perfectly after years of use. His grandfather's hands once guided this same blade, and his grandfather's grandfather before him. The wisdom of generations flows through Hassan's movements as he selects his first cut, not with haste, but with the patience of one who understands that each decision will echo through seasons yet to come. With a gentle, decisive motion, he removes a branch that has grown too close to its neighbor. The clean cut reveals pale wood beneath the bark, like opening a door to the tree's inner strength. Hassan steps back, studying how this single change allows morning light to fall more evenly on the remaining branches. The tree already seems to breathe more freely, its remaining limbs no longer competing for space and nourishment. A pair of doves settles nearby, their soft cooing a gentle accompaniment to Hassan's methodical work. They seem to understand that this quiet ritual poses no threat, that the gardener's movements carry only care and intention. Their presence brings a sense of approval from the natural world, as if all of creation recognizes the sacred act taking place. Moving to the next tree, Hassan considers each branch like a story being edited. Some chapters must be shortened to allow others to flourish. A young shoot growing straight up, what gardeners call a water sprout, receives his attention. Though vigorous and green, it will never bear fruit, only consume the tree's energy. Its removal, swift and clean, redirects that vital force toward branches that will carry blossoms come spring. The rhythm of his work becomes meditative. Cut, step back, observe, move forward. Each tree presents its own puzzle, its own needs. The apricot requires different care than the fig, the almond different attention than the date palm. Hassan reads each one like an old friend, whose moods and tendencies he has come to know through seasons of careful observation. As the morning sun climbs higher, warming his shoulders, Hassan reflects on the deeper wisdom his grandfather once shared. The tree that is never pruned, the old man had said, grows wild but weak. Its branches tangle, its fruit grows small and bitter. But the tree that receives careful cutting, that tree learns to focus its strength, to produce fruit so sweet that even the birds sing with joy. Hassan pauses at a young pear tree, its slender branches still learning their proper direction. Here, the cuts must be even gentler, more thoughtful. Too much removed too quickly would shock the tender wood. Instead, he makes small adjustments, guiding rather than commanding, suggesting the shape the tree might grow into rather than forcing it into an unnatural form. The pile of removed branches grows slowly beside him. These pieces, seemingly discarded, will not go to waste. Some will become kindling for the evening fire that warms the gardener's simple home. Others will be ground into mulch, returning to nourish the very soil that feeds these trees. Even in their cutting away, they continue to serve the garden's greater purpose. A gentle breeze stirs the bare branches, creating a subtle symphony of whispers. Hassan listens carefully, imagining how this same wind will move through leafy boughs come summer, how it will carry the perfume of blossoms across the hidden garden. The trees he tends now, with seemingly harsh cuts, will reward his trust with abundance. Sweet dates heavy on their stems, figs purple and bursting with honey sweetness, pomegranates like jeweled treasures waiting to be discovered. As the morning's work draws to a close, Hassan sets down his pruning knife and walks slowly among the trees he has tended. Each one stands a little straighter, a little more purposeful. The spaces between branches now hold promise room for sunlight to dance, for air to circulate, for the gentle magic of growth to work its ancient wonder. The hidden garden rests in peaceful silence, its trees dreaming of the abundance to come. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden pathways when Hassan first noticed them approaching through the date palm grove. 3 figures moved slowly along the dusty road that curved past the garden's eastern wall, their robes bleached pale by desert winds, their steps measured with the careful rhythm of those who had walked many miles. The eldest among them leaned heavily on a wooden staff, while the younger 2 carried bundles wrapped in faded cloth upon their backs. Hassan set down his watering vessel and moved quietly toward the garden gate. He had tended these paths for 30 years, and in that time, he had learned to recognize the particular gait of pilgrims, the way they carried both weariness and purpose in equal measure, their eyes fixed on distant horizons while their feet remained rooted to the earth beneath them. These travelers bore the unmistakable signs of a long journey toward the holy city of Mecca, their faces weathered by sun and wind, their sandals worn thin by countless steps across shifting sands. "Peace be upon you, travelers," Hassan called softly as they drew near the garden's entrance. The sound of trickling water from the fountain within seemed to quicken at his words, as if the garden itself welcomed their approach. "You walk the sacred path." The eldest pilgrim raised his hand in greeting, his voice hoarse from the dry air. "And upon you, peace, keeper of this green sanctuary. We seek only to rest our feet in whatever shade you might spare, for the road ahead stretches long before us." Hassan opened the wooden gate wide, gesturing toward the cool interior where jasmine vines climbed trellises of weathered cedar. "Come, friends, the garden offers its shade freely, and there is sweet water from the well that runs deep beneath these roots. Your journey honors us with its presence." The 3 pilgrims stepped through the gateway, and Hassan watched their shoulders relax as the garden's embrace enveloped them. The temperature dropped noticeably here among the flowering shrubs, where carefully tended irrigation channels carried life-giving water through narrow furrows carved in the earth. Pomegranate trees, heavy with crimson fruit, provided shelter overhead, their leaves rustling with the gentlest of breezes that seemed to rise from the garden's heart. Hassan led them to a circular area where stone benches curved around the central fountain. The water rose in a gentle arc before falling back into the basin with a sound like distant rain. Date palms swayed above them, their fronds creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted and danced across the pilgrims' upturned faces. "Sit, please," Hassan said, gesturing to the smooth stones worn comfortable by countless visitors over the years. "Let the garden restore what the road has taken." The eldest pilgrim lowered himself carefully onto the bench, his relief evident in the way his shoulders settled against the stone backrest. His companions followed, setting down their bundles with grateful sighs. Around them, the garden hummed with quiet life, bees moving lazily between rose blossoms, small birds calling from hidden perches among the fig trees, and always the gentle sound of water finding its way through carefully carved channels. Hassan disappeared briefly among the date palms and returned carrying a wooden tray laden with clay cups and a pitcher beaded with cool moisture. Beside the water, he had arranged a selection of fresh dates, their skins glistening amber in the dappled sunlight, along with small honey cakes that still held the warmth of morning baking. "Drink deeply," he urged, filling each cup with water so clear it caught the light like liquid crystal. "The well that feeds this garden has run pure for 300 years, drawing from springs that touch the very bones of the earth." The pilgrims drank gratefully, the cool water washing dust from their throats and bringing color back to their sun-weathered cheeks. They ate the sweet dates slowly, savoring each bite while their feet soaked in the shallow basin Hassan had filled for them from the fountain's overflow. "You are far from your home?" the eldest pilgrim asked between bites, his voice already stronger from the refreshment. Hassan smiled, settling himself on a low stool beneath a flowering orange tree. "This garden is my home now, as it has been for 30 years. But I was born in a village 3 days' walk to the south, among people who understand that caring for travelers is as sacred as caring for the soil." The afternoon passed quietly in this way, with gentle conversation flowing between periods of comfortable silence. Hassan shared stories of the garden's history, while the pilgrims spoke of the villages and landscapes they had traversed. Their feet gradually ceased their aching, soothed by cool water and the soft grass that grew beside the fountain's edge. As the sun began its descent toward the western wall, painting the garden in shades of amber and gold, the pilgrims prepared to resume their journey. They rose refreshed, their steps lighter, their bundles somehow less burdensome than before. Hassan filled their water skins from the well and wrapped additional dates in palm leaves for the road ahead. "May your path be smooth and your destination blessed," he said as they reached the garden gate. "And may your garden continue to offer its peace to all who seek it," the eldest pilgrim replied. "Such hospitality plants seeds in the heart that bloom long after the journey's end." The winter solstice arrives in Cairo with a whisper of cool air that carries the scent of distant rain. Hassan wakes before dawn, as he has done for countless mornings, but today feels different. The darkness seems deeper, more complete, as if the night is reluctant to release its hold on the world. Through his small window, he can see the garden paths shrouded in shadow, the familiar shapes of his beloved plants reduced to gentle silhouettes against the pearl-gray sky. He moves slowly through his morning preparations, his weathered hands wrapping around a warm cup of mint tea. The ceramic feels comforting against his palms as he sips the fragrant liquid, letting its warmth spread through his chest. Today is the shortest day, when darkness claims its greatest victory, yet Hassan feels no sadness. Instead, there is anticipation, a quiet knowing that this moment of deepest shadow is also the promise of returning light. As the first pale threads of dawn begin to weave through the garden, Hassan gathers his collection of oil lamps. Some are small and delicate, crafted from brass that gleams like captured sunlight. Others are larger, their clay surfaces worn smooth by years of gentle handling. Each lamp holds a story, a memory of evenings spent tending to his hidden sanctuary. He fills them one by one with sweet-scented oil, the liquid catching the early light like liquid amber. The garden welcomes him with its familiar embrace. Even in winter's grip, life persists here in quiet, determined ways. The jasmine vines that climb the ancient walls have shed their summer abundance, but their stems remain green and supple, ready to burst into fragrant bloom when warmth returns. Along the sheltered southern wall, winter roses unfurl their petals in shades of cream and blush pink, their perfume soft but unmistakable in the cool air. Hassan begins his ritual, lighting the first lamp near the fountain where water continues its eternal dance. The flame springs to life with a gentle whoosh, casting a warm golden circle on the stone pathway. The light seems to breathe, expanding and contracting with the slight breeze that stirs the garden. He places this lamp carefully on a low wall where its glow will reflect in the moving water, creating dancing patterns of light and shadow. Moving deeper into the garden, he continues his work. Each lamp finds its perfect home, nestled among the winter herbs that release their earthy fragrances when brushed by his robes. Perched on the edge of raised beds where hardy greens push through the dark soil, balanced on ancient stones that have witnessed centuries of seasons turn and return. The bitter orange trees, heavy with fruit that glows like small suns, receive their own illumination. Hassan places lamps beneath their branches, and suddenly the oranges seem to capture and hold the light, transforming into ornaments of pure gold against the dark green leaves. The scent of citrus mingles with the warm smell of burning oil, creating an atmosphere both exotic and deeply comforting. As afternoon fades toward the longest night, Hassan lights the final lamps. The garden has been transformed into a constellation of earthbound stars, each flame a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. The pathways, once lost in shadow, now flow like rivers of warm light between the planted beds. Every turn reveals new visions, flames reflected in still pools, light filtering through the delicate branches of young trees, shadows that dance and play across ancient walls. The winter-blooming plants seem to respond to this gentle illumination. Night-blooming cereus buds, though still tightly closed, appear to lean toward the nearest flames. The hardy cyclamen that carpet shaded corners lift their faces, their white and pink petals catching and holding the lamplight like tiny mirrors. Even the dormant bulbs sleeping beneath the soil seem to sense the promise these flames carry, that spring will come, that growth will return, that the eternal cycle continues its patient turn. Hassan settles on his favorite stone bench, wrapped in a warm woolen cloak, and watches his creation breathe in the gathering dusk. The flames flicker but hold steady, their light neither harsh nor demanding, but gentle and sustaining. They speak of human presence, of care and intention, of the decision to meet darkness not with fear but with quiet celebration. Around him, the garden whispers its winter secrets. Palm fronds rustle with stories of distant oases. Water moves over stones with the rhythm of ancient prayers. And everywhere, the lamps burn steady and true, each flame a small act of faith that tomorrow the sun will climb a little higher, stay a little longer, and begin the slow but certain journey back toward light. In this moment of perfect stillness, Hassan understands what the desert sages knew, that every ending carries within it the seeds of beginning, every darkness the promise of dawn, every winter the certainty of spring's return. The morning light filters through the ancient date palms like liquid amber, casting dancing shadows across the garden paths that Hassan has tended for 30 years. Today is different. Today, his master comes. Master Khalil moves slowly along the worn stone walkway, his weathered hands trailing gently across the leaves of jasmine vines that have grown thick and lush under Hassan's care. The old gardener's eyes, clouded now with age, still hold the same gentle wisdom that Hassan remembers from his youth. Each step is measured, deliberate, as if the master is reading the garden story written in soil and stem. "You have listened well," Khalil says softly, his voice like wind through olive branches. He pauses beside a magnificent pomegranate tree, its branches heavy with ruby fruit. "This tree was barely knee-high when you first came to me. Look how it reaches toward the sky now, how its roots drink deeply from the earth." Hassan walks quietly beside his teacher, remembering those early days when his hands were clumsy with the watering vessel, when he pulled weeds too hastily, and disturbed the delicate balance of growth. The master's patience had been endless then, just as his insight seems infinite now. They move deeper into the garden's heart, where the fountain bubbles softly in its circular basin. The sound has become the garden's heartbeat over the years, steady and reassuring. Khalil settles slowly onto the marble bench beside the water, his fingers dipping into the cool stream that feeds the irrigation channels. "Do you remember what I taught you about listening?" the master asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Hassan nods, settling beside him on the sun-warmed stone. Of course he remembers. It was the first lesson, and the hardest to learn. "The garden speaks," Hassan recites softly, but only to those who are still enough to hear. Khalil's weathered face creases into a smile. Around them, the garden demonstrates this ancient wisdom. The gentle rustling of palm fronds carries news of the wind's direction. The slight droop of rose petals whispers of thirst. The deep green of the mint leaves speaks of contentment in the cool, moist soil near the fountain's edge. "And what does it tell you now?" the master asks, closing his eyes as he listens to the symphony of growing things. Hassan lets his awareness expand, feeling into the subtle communications that surround them. "The figs are nearly ready for harvest," he says slowly. "The soil beneath the lemon trees needs more water. The climbing roses want to be pruned before the heat of summer arrives. But there is something else, something deeper that Hassan hesitates to name. The garden speaks of continuity, of seasons flowing into seasons, of the endless cycle of growth and rest, bloom and dormancy. It speaks of time itself, patient and unhurried." Khalil opens his eyes and looks directly at Hassan. "And what else?" Hassan's throat tightens with sudden understanding. "It speaks of change coming, of new hands learning to tend what we have built together." The old master nods slowly, his gaze moving across the garden they have both loved so well. "Every gardener is a guardian for a time," he says. "We nurture, we learn, we pass on what we have discovered. The garden remembers all of this, holds it in its roots and branches." A butterfly alights on the fountain's edge, its wings catching the morning sun like stained glass. They watch in comfortable silence as it drinks from the water, then flutters away to explore the lavender blooms nearby. "You have become a true listener, Hassan," Khalil says, reaching over to place his hand gently on his student's shoulder. "The garden has taught you its language, and you have learned to speak it in return. This is the greatest gift a gardener can receive." The morning grows warmer, and the air fills with the perfume of orange blossoms and herbs. Somewhere in the garden, birds begin their daily chorus, adding their voices to the quiet conversation between earth and sky, root and leaf, teacher and student. Hassan knows this is goodbye, though no words of farewell have been spoken. The knowledge sits quietly in his heart, peaceful as the garden itself. He has been entrusted with something precious, and he will guard it well, just as someday he too will pass these gentle teachings to hands younger than his own. The master rises slowly from the bench, taking one last look around the garden that has been his life's work and his greatest teacher. "Listen well," he whispers to the morning air, to Hassan, to the eternal conversation between gardener and garden. "Listen and remember." The first light of dawn filters through the date palms like liquid gold, casting long shadows across the ancient stones of Hassan's garden sanctuary. He moves slowly along the familiar pathways, his bare feet silent against the cool earth, feeling the gentle transition from night's embrace to morning's promise. The air carries the lingering sweetness of night-blooming jasmine, now beginning to close its delicate petals as the sun climbs higher above the distant minarets of Cairo. Hassan pauses beside the old fountain, its gentle murmur a constant companion through the changing seasons. The water catches the early light, creating dancing patterns of silver and amber that play across his weathered hands as he cups the precious liquid. He drinks deeply, tasting the pure essence of the underground spring that has fed this garden for countless generations. Each drop seems to carry the memory of all who came before him, all who found solace in this hidden oasis. The roses are beginning to stir in the warming air, their heavy heads lifting toward the light. Hassan moves among them with the reverence of a pilgrim in a sacred temple, touching each bloom with infinite gentleness. The damask roses, their petals soft as silk scarves, release their ancient perfume into the morning breeze. The white roses, pure as desert sand beneath moonlight, seem to glow with their own inner radiance. He understands now that he is not their owner, but merely their temporary guardian, a brief custodian in the endless cycle of growth and renewal. Moving deeper into the garden, Hassan tends to the fruit trees with the same meditative care. The pomegranate tree, heavy with crimson globes, whispers secrets of abundance to the morning air. He picks one carefully, feeling its weight in his palm, marveling at the perfect architecture of seeds and chambers within. Each pomegranate contains the promise of new trees, new gardens, new guardians yet to come. The cycle stretches backward through time to the first gardener who planted these roots, and forward into a future he will never see, but helps to create with every gentle touch. The fig tree spreads its broad leaves like a living canopy, offering shade and sustenance in equal measure. Hassan collects the ripe fruits with practiced hands, their purple skin yielding slightly under his gentle pressure. He knows that these same trees fed the scholars who once walked these paths, the poets who found inspiration beneath their branches, the travelers who discovered this sanctuary when the outside world grew too harsh to bear. Each fig carries the sweetness of continuity, the taste of time itself made manifest. As the sun rises higher, Hassan tends to the herb garden where mint and basil grow in neat rows beside ancient olive trees. The fragrance rises around him like incense, carrying his thoughts beyond the garden walls to the eternal rhythms that govern all growing things. He pulls weeds with mindful attention, not as an enemy to be conquered, but as wayward children to be gently redirected. Even the weeds play their part in the great symphony of growth and decay, death and rebirth that makes the soil rich and the garden fertile. The morning progresses in peaceful silence, broken only by the distant call of prayer from the city beyond the walls, the gentle splash of water over stone, and the soft rustle of leaves in the warming breeze. Hassan works without hurry, understanding that the garden operates on a different timeline than the bustling world outside. Here, moments expand into eternity, and eternity contracts into the simple act of watering a thirsty plant or deadheading a spent bloom. As he works, Hassan feels the presence of all who came before him in this sacred space. The original gardener, who first coaxed roses to bloom in the desert heat. The countless caretakers, who preserved this sanctuary through wars and famines, invasions and celebrations. The visitors who found healing among these flowers when the world grew too heavy to carry alone. They are all here, woven into the very essence of this place, their love and devotion feeding the soil as surely as water and sunlight feed the leaves. The sun climbs toward its zenith, and Hassan completes his morning rounds with a deep sense of fulfillment. He settles onto the worn stone bench beside the fountain, closing his eyes and listening to the garden's gentle symphony. Bird song mingles with the whisper of wind through date palms, the soft buzz of bees moving from flower to flower, the eternal music of water finding its way from source to sea. In this moment of perfect stillness, Hassan understands his place in the great continuum of gardeners and gardens, of tenders and the tended. He is both teacher and student, creator and created, temporary guardian of something eternal. The roses will bloom long after his hands no longer tend them. New guardians will walk these paths, water these plants, find peace beneath these ancient trees. The garden will endure, patient and eternal, offering its gifts to each generation that discovers its hidden gates and chooses to enter with reverence and love.